Chapter 277. At this moment, Xiao Yan and Luo Jin were seated in a VIP room within the Tianyan auction house. The walls on all four sides were empty. A thick and heavy stone door blocked the only exit. Within the entire secret room, there were only a few pearls embedded in the wall that emitted a gentle fluorescent light, illuminating the entire room. Due to the special construction materials of the auction house and the restrictions placed by strong people, any aura and spiritual perception would be restricted in this place. Simply put, after entering this place, as long as one covered their body and face, no one would be able to recognize who they were. Of course, all of this was under the premise that one had a certain level of strength. If a Dodi were to enter, he would naturally be able to ignore the restrictions with his terrifying strength. At this moment, Xiao Yan's face no longer had that extremely weak appearance from before. Although his face was still a little pale, it was much better compared to his previous appearance. Xiao Yan's figure was seated on a stone chair. At this moment, his face no longer had its usual indifferent expression. His eyebrows were slightly knit together, and his eyes were flickering with a cold glint. At this moment, all of this revealed that his heart was not calm. A 9-star half-emperor. Xiao Yan clearly knew that the old man he had come into contact with outside the auction house earlier would become another great enemy of his from today onwards. He originally did not have the intention to stir up trouble. However, there was always someone who would make things difficult for him. The tree wants to be still, but the wind does not stop. Who? After violently gulping down a mouthful of rich tea, Xiao Yan let out a long breath. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the gentle light reflected from the teacup. He remained silent. Seeing this, Luo Jin also seemed to be deep in thought as he drank the tea in his cup. Immediately, he turned his gaze and smiled at Xiao Yan. "Brother Yan Xiao, you almost fooled me just now." Xiao Yan frowned and smiled. He shook his head in a self-deprecating manner. He looked at Luo Jin and asked, "That old man just now, you all call him Musher. Who is he?" Luo Jin had already expected Xiao Yan's question. Without much hesitation, he gently knit his brows and said, "Musher is a respectful name given to him by the people in the ancient savage city. His real name is Muhan, and he is a 9-star half-emperor. You should have sensed this earlier. With his strength other than old Luo, he is the strongest person in the ancient savage city." Xiao Yan secretly nodded his head. A 9-star half-emperor was indeed enough to dominate the ancient savage city. However, there was another question in Xiao Yan's heart. Furthermore, apart from him, Mu Han is the only rank 3 formation master in the southwestern border. Oh! Before Xiao Yan's doubt Luo Jin's words, Luo Jin's voice was a formation half-emperor. Once these words left his mouth, Xiao Yan's heart was immediately extremely shocked. At the same time, he no longer doubted his own judgment. Indeed, no wonder his soul power is so frightening. So that's how it is. His soul power has truly reached the consolidation realm. Xiao Yan frowned. The 9-star half-emperor Muhan was not someone that the current him could deal with. No matter what, he was only a 3-star half-emperor. Even if he had broken through to the 4-star half-emperor realm, the gap between their strengths was not something that could be easily closed. If he were to face Muhan alone, Xiao Yan would not have any chance of victory. Even if his sky extinction step had reached the advanced wind step, a 9-star half-emperor was definitely not something that someone like Yan Bing, who was only a hair's breadth away, could compare to. The slightest mistake could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. This was the principle behind it. Thinking of this, a cold glint shot out from Xiao Yan's eyes. In order to deal with him, MOD was willing to do anything. He even dared to use someone who could turn around and devour him at any time. It was not hard to imagine how much hatred MOD had for Xiao Yan. Of course, one could not rule out the possibility that MOD was doing this purely for Xiao Yan's heavenly flame. Perhaps, killing Xiao Yan was his secondary goal. MOD, it would have been fine if you had left after the alchemist competition. However, you have repeatedly come to find trouble with me and insisted on making things difficult for me. Since you insist on making things difficult for me, you cannot blame me for being vicious and merciless. Bang! After MOD finished speaking, the teacup in Xiao Yan's hand exploded with a bang, and turned into dust that scattered in all directions. Next, we should prepare the items for the auction. Just now, Songgang told me that you are actually going to auction 6 Void Lightning Pool invitation. TSK, this is unprecedented. Feeling that the atmosphere in the room was becoming more and more oppressive, Luo Jin immediately changed the topic and teased Xiaoyan. Haha, I was just lucky. Xiaoyan understood Luo Jin's intention and immediately smiled. With a flip of his hand, a storage ring that he had prepared beforehand appeared in his palm. The items in this storage ring are all the items that I will be auctioning this time. Although I did not hand them over to the auction house beforehand, I believe that with their ability, they will be able to determine the quality and value with a single glance. Luo Jin nodded slightly. In his heart, he was a little surprised by Xiaoyan's high level of caution. Before knowing the relationship between Songgang and Luo Jin, Xiaoyan was actually able to guard against strangers to such an extent. Compared to Luo Jin, Xiaoyan was indeed much more mature. To be able to stand out among so many cultivators at such a young age, his experience was naturally extraordinary. This level of caution was also reasonable. After all, before truly knowing the other party's background, no matter how sincere the other party's attitude was, he absolutely could not easily trust them. Otherwise, it was very likely that this would bring about an irreversible disaster. Ka. As the two of them spoke, the heavy stone door was opened. The two of them looked over, and saw that Songgang and Elder Xian had already appeared at the entrance of the secret room. Is it done? Xiaoyan casually asked. The auction this time had attracted quite a number of factions. Even the number of half-step emperors was unimaginable. Therefore, after Xiaoyan and the others entered the auction house, Elder Xian and Songgang went to the auction house to maintain order. This time they were gone for 2 hours. Yes, we finally settled those fellows down. Before they sat down, they were anxiously clamoring to see the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. Fortunately, the two of us old fellows were here. After moving around a little with them, they became obedient. Hearing Songgang's somewhat awkward words, Xiaoyan frowned slightly. Luo Jin, who knew Songgang's character, helplessly shook his head. Elder Xian also curled his lips, expressing his helplessness. When Xiaoyan saw their reactions, he quickly understood in his heart. This so-called moving around a little probably meant a lot of fighting. Seeing their helpless expressions, Songgang awkwardly smiled. Then his expression became serious and he said, "But now according to the time, the originally scheduled auction time has already passed. I'm afraid that we don't have time to make any more preparations." In this regard, Xiaoyan secretly curled his lips in his heart. Time has passed. I'm afraid that a large part of this time has been consumed by your fighting. It's fine. I've already prepared the items here. I've also listed the auction order. When the time comes, we just need to let the auction house's people appraise it on the spot and directly auction it. Hearing this, the few of them nodded. Xiaoyan's actions had saved a lot of trouble for their auction house. In this way, the auction process did not need to be delayed. Xiaoyan casually took out the storage ring and handed it to Songgang. Because Songgang had just received this storage ring, he did not know how many items Xiaoyan wanted to auction in it. Therefore, he naturally checked it. But when Songgang checked it, a shocked expression suddenly appeared on his face. The muscles at the corner of his mouth could not help but twitch violently. Under his inspection, there were all kinds of items in this storage ring. In total, there were no less than 100 kinds of items. Moreover, combined with the quantity of each item, the value of these items would be at least a few million spirit coins if the auction was really completed. Moreover, the preciousness of these items surprised Songgang. He did not expect Xiaoyan to take out so many heavenly treasures. Even he had only heard of some of the items, but had never seen them. Now that he had seen them, Songgang could not help but feel a little moved in his heart. These things could really be said to be extravagant. It was hard to imagine that Xiaoyan would take out these items to auction. If these were items that Xiaoyan did not need, it would be fine. But if these were items that he did not want, how could he imagine? Chapter 278. At this moment, there were no empty seats in the enormous auction house. There were even countless people who continued to pour into the auction house. If one were to look carefully, one would discover that although there were quite a lot of people who had entered the auction house, They were all half-martial emperors. The weakest among them was a 2-star half-martial emperor. Outside the auction house, the surging crowd of people was stopped 100 feet away from the entrance of the auction house. The majority of these people had extremely regretful expressions on their faces as they left the auction house in disappointment. The reason for that was because they were not qualified to enter the auction house. When Song Gang returned to Xiao Yin and Luo Jin's side, a new rule was set up in the auction house. Due to the large number of people who had come to participate in the auction, the upper echelons of the auction house decided to set up a new rule for the auction house in order to maintain order. Anyone who wanted to enter the auction house to participate in the auction had to pay 50,000 spirit coins. 50,000 spirit coins was not a small amount for the majority of people. Paying 50,000 spirit coins for nothing had the effect of discouraging the people who had come to participate in the auction. After all, there were a lot of half-martial emperors participating in the auction. Xiao Yin wanted to auction a mere 6 Void Lightning Reservoir invitation cards. Without a certain amount of financial strength, the chances of them obtaining the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation cards from the half-martial emperors was extremely slim. Thus, they were not willing to take this risk. At the same time when this new rule was set up, not only did it allow the auction house to earn a large amount of profit, it also reshuffled the people who were going to participate in the auction. The 50,000 spirit coins entrance fee caused the majority of people to shrink back. It also divided the forces who had the strength to compete for the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation cards. Generally speaking, the people who were able to enter the auction house were all truly rich people. It had to be said that after managing the auction house for so many years, Song Gang was very familiar with the various methods of making money in the auction house. Through his method, not only did he manage to get rid of those rich big shots, when the time came for the auction, the various parties would naturally bid excessively high prices in order to compete for the auction items. In this way, regardless of whether it was for the auction house or Xiao Yin, there were only benefits and no disadvantages. As time slowly passed, the auction ground was eventually filled with a crowd. Noisy voices were like waves of muffled thunder, as they continuously reverberated within the auction ground. The crowd, who were already impatient to begin with, became even more restless in this noisy atmosphere. Some of the relatively strong half-martial emperors even began to express their dissatisfaction toward the attendance of the auction houses. For a time, the huge auction house was in chaos. 4 human figures were seated in the first row of the auction ground closest to the auction stage. Their eyes were tightly shut as they leaned against the chairs under them. These 4 people were surprisingly MOD's group, who had met Xiao Yan's group outside the auction ground earlier. Sensing the noisy atmosphere, even with the temperaments of these 4 people, they still felt a trace of irritation in their hearts. As for Mu Han, a 9-star half-martial emperor, he was even more disgusted by this. Humph noisy! After a cold snort sounded, an invisible spiritual pressure immediately swept across the entire auction ground with Mu Han in the middle. The frightening aura caused the expressions of everyone in the auction ground to change. Only at this moment did they recall that there was still a god, Mu Han, in the auction ground. If anyone neglected him and came into contact with him, the consequences would not be a joke. Ha, I'm really sorry. Due to some matters that I had to deal with later on, I was a little late. I hope that everyone can understand. After all, this auction is truly extraordinary. For the sake of caution, this old man had no choice but to make more preparations. However, just as Mu Han's spiritual storm swept across the entire auction ground, a bold and loud laughter was transmitted from the empty space. Soon after, everyone saw Song Gang, who had left earlier, once again appear in the auction ground. After his words sounded, everyone turned their gazes towards Song Gang. However, the latter looked towards Mu Han, who was seated in the front row. He once again smiled and said, "Many thanks to Teacher Mu. Just now this old man was not around. From the looks of it, Teacher Mu has helped to maintain order in the auction ground. This old man thanks you." After his words sounded, Song Gang's sharp eyes swept across the entire auction ground. Finally, they once again landed on Mu Han's body. "Humph, if you are truly grateful, quickly take out the Void Lightning Pool invitation, and allow this old man to bid for it." Mu Han coldly laughed and said, Haha, Teacher Mu must be joking. There are indeed quite a number of items that will be auctioned in this auction. Moreover, the auction order is also decided by Mr. Yen Xiao. Although this old man is the manager of the auction house, it is not easy for me to change it. Therefore, I hope that Teacher Mu can be patient and wait. After hearing Mu Han's words, Song Gang merely smiled faintly. He played down the matter and casually brushed it aside. Humph. I think that all of you already have an intention to use the Void Lightning Pool invitation to gain more benefits for yourselves. This should be the true motive of that brat. Haha, I don't think so. Teacher Mu, you are one of the two great heads of the ancient savage city. Given your status, it is too degrading for you to sit here. This old man has already prepared a room for all of you. Why don't the few of you head over there? Mu Han's words did not move Song Gang. Instead, he smiled faintly and spoke to Mu Han once again. Upon hearing this, the latter's old eyes immediately narrowed. His deep eyes stared intently at Song Gang. Beside him, Yen Bing and Old Monster who exchanged glances. Their eyes flickered but they did not open their mouths to say anything. On the other side, MOD could not help but frown. He felt that Song Gang's words had an ulterior motive. However, he could not figure out what it was. TSK, since you have kindly invited us, I will go along with you this time. However, do you really think that you can block this old man's probing with just these? After all, he was an old fox. Compared to MOD, Mu Han immediately understood Song Gang's intentions. The reason why Song Gang had asked them to leave the auction ground was so that he could use the special seal in the VIP room to restrict Mu Han's spiritual strength from probing. After all, if Mu Han were to use his own strength to secretly use some tricks on the people who had come to participate in the auction, how would they be able to continue the auction? Haha, since that's the case, please. Mu Han's words were met with a light laugh from Song Gang. He seemed to be indifferent to this matter. Or perhaps he was extremely confident in the seal in the auction house. Song Gang waved his sleeve and gestured for them to enter. With a strange smile on his face, Song Gang looked at Mu Han and the others. Mu Han's old eyes narrowed again. Radiance flickered in his eyes. However, he was the first to stand up. With a light snort, he followed an attendant who walked forward to lead them to the VIP room that was waiting for them. Behind him, Yen Bing and the others hesitated for a moment before following closely behind him. As the few of them left, Song Gang's gaze was fixed on the attendant who had led them to the VIP room. He was actually slightly nervous in his heart. Seeing that the few of them had disappeared into a passageway, Song Gang no longer hesitated. He faced the crowd again and waved his sleeve. The aura of an 8-star half-martial emperor immediately burst forth. Everyone present was startled. They had just sent off a venerated god with their gazes. Now this venerated god was likely going to act up again. Ignoring the ordinary half-martial emperors who had serious expressions on their faces, Song Gang extended his broad palms. Both of his palms moved in succession. His fingertips lightly touched each other. Numerous complicated hand seals were rapidly formed. Following the hand seals, mysterious ripples appeared in the space before him. This was a special technique of the Heavenly Clouds auction house. However, it was also a formation that condensed an invisible barrier in the auction ground. This barrier would not obstruct a person's body. Instead, it would obstruct the probing of one's soul. In terms of formations, this could not be considered as a high-level formation. However, in this barren land of the continent, it was extremely rare. When Song Gang's hand seals were completely formed, the entire auction ground was enveloped by a mysterious aura. At this moment, everyone felt that their souls had become somewhat heavy. Although they knew that this was because of the formation, they were still endlessly shocked by it. With the formation enveloping them, the auras of these half-martial emperors were isolated from each other. At this moment, apart from relying on their faces, none of them could recognize each other. Among these people, there were many who used masks. This greatly increased the secrecy of these people during the auction. Haha, I've made everyone wait for a long time. Now, all the preparations have been completed. The things that everyone has been waiting for are all in this storage ring. The 6 Void Lightning Pool invitation are all in it. Hua! Hearing the Void Lightning Pool invitation, everyone present immediately stood up. Song Gang also smiled with satisfaction. Then he once again laughed heartily and said, "It seems that everyone is impatient. Since that's the case, this old man will now officially announce that the Heavenly Clouds Auction House's Void Lightning Pool Invitation Auction House will now begin." Chapter 279. When Song Gang announced the start of the auction, Muhan and the rest were led by the attendant to a VIP room in the auction house. The attendant had his head lowered the entire time, and was slightly shorter than the four people beside him. Therefore, Muhan and the others could not see his face clearly. However, they did not care about it. After all, he was just a small fry and would not attract the interest of powerful cultivators like them. When they arrived at the door of the VIP room, the attendant stood to the side and respectfully gestured for them to enter. Muhan's old eyes flickered. The hongmen in front of him made him feel a little uncomfortable. Song Gang's expression and attitude surfaced in his mind. Even though he was confident in his own strength, he couldn't help but have a weird feeling when he faced Song Gang. Humph! With a soft snort, Muhan threw the distracting thoughts to the back of his head. In his heart, he was laughing at himself for worrying too much and thinking too much. With a wave of his sleeves, Muhan's sharp eyes swept across the attendant who was bowing beside him as he spoke in an indifferent tone. "All right, you don't have to enter. We don't need anyone to wait on us. You may leave." After Muhan spoke, the attendant's expression changed slightly. He lifted his bowed body slightly and was about to speak when Muhan coldly snorted, causing the latter to hurriedly bow again. Seeing this, Muhan involuntarily laughed coldly in his heart. With a move of his feet, he strode forward and took the lead to enter the VIP room. Behind him, Yan Bing and the other two entered one after another. Crack, 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 crack. After the few of them entered, the heavy stone door closed with a series of cracking sounds. Only when the stone door was completely shut did the attendant standing at the door slowly lift his head, revealing a young and handsome face. From the looks of it, it was Luo Jin. Luo Jin stretched his body slightly. He was afraid that Muhan would discover him in the VIP room. With Muhan's soul power, the special materials and arrays in the VIP room wouldn't be able to completely block Muhan's probing. Immediately, Luo Jin did not dare to hesitate. With a flip of his hand, a palm-sized astrolabe immediately appeared in his hand. The astrolabe was the greater one astrolabe that Luo Jin had used to deal with the cloud-splitting wolf. With the astrolabe in his hand, Luo Jin immediately poured his doqi into it. With the continuous influx of doqi, the 7 stars on the astrolabe lit up and emitted a faint fluorescent light. Luo Jin took out the astrolabe and placed it in the void in front of him. Then he raised both of his hands to his chest and formed a series of seals with his 10 fingers. At the same time, in the void in front of him, a circle of invisible space ripples spread out. A strange energy spread out rapidly. Under the control of Luo Jin's mind, the energy enveloped the VIP room where Muhan and the others were. The greater 1-star disc was an array disc, and there were many high-level arrays in it. Luo Jin could easily cast some high-level arrays that could only be cast by array masters with the help of the arrays that already existed in the array disc. Heh! Luo Jin only sighed in relief after the invisible ripples had enveloped the entire VIP room. The corner of his mouth revealed a cold smile. Immediately, he turned around and left. Although Muhan appeared to be here for the Void Lightning Pool invitation, he would definitely not allow the auction to proceed as planned after seeing his murderous intent toward Xiao Yan. Song Gang was present at the auction. Although Song Gang was not as strong as Muhan, Song Gang would more or less restrain himself due to the reputation of the Tianyan auction house. On the surface, Song Gang would not do anything out of line. However, Song Gang would have difficulty suppressing Muhan's actions in secret. Helpless, Luo Jin could only personally take action. Taking advantage of the fact that Muhan and the others had just entered the VIP room and had yet to react, Luo Jin immediately used the astrolabe to seal the entire VIP room. In this way, even if Muhan's spiritual strength had already stepped into the consolidation stage, he would not be able to break through the layer of array that Luo Jin had set up. When Luo Jin returned to the VIP room where Xiao Yan was, the expression in Muhan's eyes suddenly hardened. His shriveled hands abruptly slammed the armrests on both sides of him. The chair under him immediately broke and his body stood up. Muhan's body also stood up. Bastard! How is this possible? How is it possible for a few 8-star half-martial emperors to do this? This sudden change also caused the faces of MOD and the others beside Muhan to immediately turn pale with fright. However, their hearts were filled with doubt. Just what had happened to cause Muhan to be so agitated? Could it be because of that Yin Xiao? Master Mu, what happened? You are. MOD's gaze quickly met with Yen Bing's and the others for an instant, before he cautiously asked Muhan with a frown. Use your spiritual strength to sense it properly. These fellows actually dared to set a trap for me. They are truly courting death. MOD's question caused Muhan's face to instantly turn gloomy. He straightened his old face and coldly shouted at MOD. Even though he was extremely dissatisfied with Muhan's attitude, MOD could only obediently shut his mouth due to the former's strength. In his heart, his spiritual strength spread out as he searched for the reason why Muhan was angry. Hiss. Just as his spiritual strength spread out, MOD's face instantly changed. His spiritual strength was actually unable to spread outside the VIP room. Outside the VIP room, there was actually an extremely strong layer of array. The spiritual strength that he was about to spread out was blocked by that array. How is this possible? I have participated in the Heavenly Cloud Auction House's auctions a few times. Even though there was always an array that blocked spiritual strength, there was never a time when the array's strength was so terrifying. What exactly is going on? MOD could not help but feel shocked in his heart when he sensed the layer of formation that enveloped the entire VIP room. Yen Bing and Old Demon who were by the side, could not help but frown slightly when they heard this. After a round of investigation, a deep shock also surged onto the faces of the two of them. From what they could sense, that array was actually more than 100 times more terrifying than any array they had encountered in the past. It was no wonder that even a rank 3 array master like Muhan was unable to break through his seal. Haha, how was it? Did everything go smoothly? Seeing that Luo Jin had returned, Xiaoyan had a faint smile on his face as he spoke. Hearing this, Luo Jin also smiled and nodded his head. He walked to the chair beside Xiaoyan and sat down. He laughed half-jokingly and said, Of course. Of course. I, Luo Jin, personally went out. After dressing up, Muhan really treated me like a manservant. Xiaoyan laughed softly as he shook his head. In his heart, he was filled with admiration for Luo Jin's bold actions. In response, Luo Jin smiled faintly. He casually picked up the tea on the table beside him and took a sip. His entire body lazily leaned against the back of the chair as he lifted his gaze and looked at the light screen in front of the two. The scene displayed on the light screen was the current situation in the auction house. Haha, if you want to talk about it, he can only blame himself. Muhan's achievements today are indeed due to his own abilities. This is something that I cannot deny. Luo Jin spoke once again. Upon hearing this, Xiaoyan nodded his head. Muhan's strength was truly absolute in the boorish desolate land. This was something that even he could not deny. However, it is also because of this that as his strength grew, he also became more cautious and cautious. He would be suspicious of everyone. As for me, I took advantage of this and was certain that he would not allow me to enter the VIP room. When he stopped me at the door, that was my chance. Chapter 280. Haha, everyone, the next item that this old man is going to take out is more than 10 times the value of the scaleless fruit. If there is anyone in the auction hall who takes a fancy to it, feel free to bid. As long as you are able to take out an item of equal value, feel free to take it away. On the auction stage, an old man was smiling as he looked at the fiery faces of the half-martial emperors below the stage. His pair of turbid old eyes revealed a satisfied expression. After the previous few rounds of intense competition, the atmosphere in the auction hall had already completely exploded. Even these half-martial emperors could not help but feel wild in their hearts when they saw the old man on the stage take out rare treasures that could only be found by chance. In addition to the old man's miraculous introduction, even though the crowd had some understanding of the auction item, the final result of the auction was still that the item was worth more than the price. At this moment, seeing that the atmosphere in the auction hall was becoming increasingly fiery, this old man did not have the slightest intention of taking out the auction item. This auctioneer was truly shrewd and ruthless. He knew when these fellows before him were the most excited. What he needed to grasp was this period of time. This was because only in this short period of time could the price of the auction item be raised in one fell swoop. In every subsequent competition, the price of the auction item would be even more terrifying. The result of this was that both the owner of the auction item and the auction house would earn even more profits. Why not do it when both sides benefit? Until a certain moment when the atmosphere in the auction hall had truly reached its peak. A satisfied smile finally appeared on the old man's wrinkled face. Soon after, he unhurriedly took out an exquisite wooden box from the storage ring on his hand. Haha, everyone, the next item is not a natural treasure, nor is it steel or metal. However, just like what this old man has said, its value is only greater than the previous items. After the old man's words sounded, the crowd in the auction hall once again stood up. However, most of them still felt anxious and dissatisfied with the old man's unhurried speed. Hearing the urging voices of the people below, the old man smiled once again. His shriveled hand gently pressed on the void in front of him, indicating for everyone to calm down. However, in his heart, he could not wait for these pots of money in front of him to become more lively. After a few more breaths, the old man slowly opened the wooden box on the crystal platform under the anxious gazes of the crowd. At the same time, he introduced the box to the crowd. Everyone, this is a low-grade human class technique, howling wind technique. Whoosh! Once those words left his mouth, the entire auction ground was shocked. Everyone's gazes were filled with extreme shock as they looked at the old man on the auction stage. It was hard to imagine that this old man would actually use a world-shaking martial technique that could shock even a half-martial emperor. Mortal-level cultivation method. Even amongst all the half-martial emperors present, how many of them were capable of cultivating such a cultivation technique? Most of these half-martial emperors only cultivated cultivation techniques of the heaven level. However, the old man on the auction stage actually possessed a mortal-level cultivation technique. How could these half-martial emperors not be envious? Seeing the crazed expressions on everyone's faces, the smile on the old man's face became even wider. His pair of old eyes flickered as he slowly swept his gaze across the entire auction hall. After that, he laughed loudly once again and said, "Haha, everyone, listen to this old man first." This time, under the temptation of a mortal-level cultivation technique, everyone immediately became obedient. They suppressed the excitement in their hearts as they stared fervently at the old man on the auction stage. Howling wind technique, a low-grade human-class wind attribute cultivation technique. It's one of the best wind attribute cultivation techniques. After cultivating it, one will be able to move through the clouds with their own wind. After cultivating it to the advanced stage, one will be able to transform into wind and clouds. It will allow the cultivator's speed and control of the wind between heaven and earth to become even more proficient. After a simple introduction, the crowd below the stage was already impatient. Before the auction even started, they were already prepared to fight over it. All sorts of threatening words were incessant. This is actually a mortal-level cultivation technique. I never thought that a mortal-level cultivation technique would actually appear in this auction. That 50,000 spirit coins was not a loss at all. Ha 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 ha. No one can fight over this howling wind technique with me. This old man is taking it for sure. Humph. You're just a bunch of low-level half-step emperors, and you actually dare to boast shamelessly here. This howling wind technique is just right for my grandson. If any of you dare to fight over it with me, I will definitely not let you off easily. Haha, everyone, please calm down. Next, it will be up to everyone to decide who will obtain this howling wind technique. Everyone should be clear about the rules. If you exchange items, the value must not be lower than the auction item itself. Now the auction begins. Hua! As soon as the old man finished speaking, a large number of competing voices rang out one after another. The auction hall, which had only been silent for a moment, instantly exploded like a pot of boiling water. After an intense bout of competition, this howling wind technique finally landed in the hands of a patriarch of a large family. Of course, correspondingly, he also paid a considerable price. The profits brought by this howling wind technique definitely far exceeded its original value. In the VIP room, Xiaoyan looked at the situation in the auction hall displayed on the light screen. He could not help but reveal a satisfied smile on his face. Obviously, he was quite satisfied with the old man's auction method. Before this, Xiaoyan had never thought that a low-level human rank cultivation technique could be auctioned for such a high price. This was enough to show the auctioneer's ability. Haha, Elder Chen is a founding member of the Tianyan auction house. His ability to auction things is unmatched. This time, the auction house specially invited him here for you. Luo Jin looked at the old man displayed on the light screen and said softly with a smile. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's face immediately revealed a look of gratitude. Thank you very much. Luo Jin smiled and shook his head. He looked at Xiaoyan and said, there's no need for us to be so polite. There's no need to be so polite between us. I know that you're not an ordinary person. Fifth Grandpa also knows that. It's just that he doesn't say it. If you really want to thank me, then just treat my help as an investment in you. As long as you remember that you still have a friend like me in the future. No. Before Luo Jin finished speaking, Xiaoyan interrupted him with a single word. This caused the former's eyebrows to twitch slightly. However, immediately after, Xiaoyan continued to speak. You and I are not friends. We should be brothers. The first half of the sentence caused Luo Jin to look surprised, but then, a smile appeared on Luo Jin's face. The smile gradually widened, and finally turned into a maniacal laugh. Xiaoyan, who was beside Luo Jin, was no different from him. Chapter 281. While the atmosphere in the auction house was in full swing due to the various auction items that the auctioneer had brought out, on the other side, in the VIP room where MOD and the others were seated, Muhan's face was still gloomy. Despite being a 9-star half-martial emperor, he was currently being locked up in a prison by an 8-star half-martial emperor. How could this allow his emotions to remain calm? Muhan's face was filled with fury. Even though he had used all of his techniques, he was ultimately unable to break the formation that covered the entire VIP room. The tier of that formation was definitely a rank 3 formation or above. Being unable to break the formation caused Muhan to become even more furious. He waved his sleeves and a frightening Do-Chi pillar shot out and violently struck the stone door. An explosion immediately sounded, and the thick stone door was blasted into a pile of rock fragments. The attendant standing outside the door was involuntarily shocked by this sudden turn of events. Where is the person from the auction house? Get your ass in here. The attendant outside the VIP room hurriedly recovered after hearing this furious cry. He did not dare to be negligent in his heart as he hurriedly entered the VIP room. He cupped his hands together and bowed to Muhan. His mouth trembled as he spoke. May I know what instructions do you have for this lowly one? Muhan was about to angrily cry out when he saw the attendant the moment he saw him. However, his eyes suddenly hardened when he saw the attendant in front of him. He involuntarily frowned and a trace of surprise rose in his heart. However, Muhan immediately came to a realization in his heart soon after. The fury on his face immediately became even more intense. He suddenly extended his hand, and his palm faced the respectful attendant in front of him. A wild and violent suction force surged out and grabbed the attendant's head in his palm. You are not that brat. Where is the fellow who brought us here earlier? Speak. After taking a glance, Muhan immediately recognized that the attendant in front of him was not the one who had brought them to the VIP room earlier. Muhan immediately understood in his heart that the formation was definitely set up by that brat from before. The attendant was extremely terrified when his head was grabbed by Muhan. His mind was completely blank for a moment. There was no need to even think about how to reply to Muhan. Trash. Seeing this, Muhan was instantly enraged. He flipped the hand that was holding the waiter's head and slammed the waiter against the wall of the VIP room. The huge force spread out, and the hard wall quickly cracked. Such a huge commotion naturally alarmed all the half-martial emperors in the auction. Xiaoyan and Luo Jin were naturally no exception. What's wrong? That fellow is still restless and insists on causing a ruckus. Xiaoyan furrowed his brows slightly, feeling slightly troubled. Only Muhan's group would dare to cause such a huge commotion in the Heavenly Clouds auction house. TSKT. That guy, it seems like he knows that he can't do it in the dark, so he directly put it out in the open. He is really a guy who never changes his mind. Luo Jin sneered. Isn't he afraid that the heavenly cloud chamber of commerce will make trouble for him? Xiaoyan frowned. Although he knew that Song Gang and Luo Jin had a close relationship, Xiaoyan did not associate the Yunin Pavilion with the Heavenly Clouds Chamber of Commerce. As the owner of the Heavenly Clouds auction house, the Heavenly Clouds Chamber of Commerce would naturally not allow their subordinate forces to suffer any losses. Haha, looking for trouble? Of course he knows how terrifying the Heavenly Clouds Chamber of Commerce is. A force like that is absolutely not something that a 9-star half-martial emperor can easily provoke. Even if he is a rank 3 array master, in the eyes of the Heavenly Clouds Chamber of Commerce, he is nothing. Luo Jin narrowed his eyes when he heard Xiaoyan's words. His mouth carried some disdain as he laughed softly. After pausing for a moment, he continued to speak. Since he dares to make a move, he naturally has the confidence to do so. The sky is high and the emperor is far away. Even the Heavenly Clouds Chamber of Commerce would not make such a big fuss over an auction house that is so far away. It is already enough that the Chamber of Commerce sent Song Gang, an 8-star half-martial emperor. As for what happens, it will be up to him to deal with it. As for Muhan, it is precisely because he is aware of this that he is fearless. Xiaoyan was a little confused as he listened to Luo Jin's long speech. He basically did not know anything about management. Therefore, he was too lazy to use his brain to try and figure out what was going on. However, Xiaoyan was somewhat curious as to why Luo Jin knew so much about the management methods of the Heavenly Clouds Chamber of Commerce. Brother Luo Jin, how do you know so much about the Heavenly Clouds Chamber of Commerce? Xiaoyan frowned slightly as a glint flashed across his eyes. Well, I roughly deduced that the management of a force is more or less the same. Luo Jin's eyes flickered as he looked at Xiaoyan. His words were somewhat unclear. However, after the two looked at each other for a moment, they tacitly understood each other and laughed out loud. On Muhan's side, Song Gang had also rushed over with a hurried expression. The auction in the auction house had already been suspended. If they could not solve the problem of Muhan, it would be difficult for the auction to continue as usual. Teacher Mu, this old man respects you as a grandmaster and a 9-star half-martial emperor. That is why I addressed you as Teacher Mu. This can be considered as taking care of your reputation. However, what you have done today has completely disregarded the reputation of my auction house. When he saw Muhan, Song Gang was too lazy to be courteous and immediately spoke in a cold voice. The relationship between the two of them was not good to begin with. Since they had already fallen out, there was no need for him to be courteous. Muhan coldly snorted when he heard Song Gang's words. With a similarly cold expression, he coldly shouted at Song Gang. Song Gang, even at this point in time, you still want to quibble with this old man. You keep saying that you respect this old man, but you are secretly opposing me. Since you look down on this old man's strength, today, this old man will properly experience whether you, Song Gang, are as fearless as the rumors say. After his words fell, Muhan did not hesitate and clawed at Song Gang. He wanted to use violence to warn everyone present that the prestige of an expert was inviolable. Muhan, this is the auction house's rule. No one is allowed to use spiritual strength in the Heavenly Clouds auction house. Even if you are a 9-star half-martial emperor, you are not an exception. However, since you insist on attacking, then let this old man experience what is so great about a 9-star half-martial emperor. After an explosive shout, Song Gang's aura was overbearing and he did not lose out to Muhan in the slightest. As his body moved, the seals in his palms changed, and he also ruthlessly sent a palm strike towards Muhan, who was charging over with an imposing aura. Boom! After an explosion, the entire auction house started to violently tremble. The might created by the joint attack of two high-level half-martial emperors caused the expressions of everyone present to change. Bang! Muhan was indeed worthy of being a 9-star half-martial emperor. Their palms merely collided for a few breaths of time, before Muhan's arm suddenly shook. A huge force violently surged forth, and Song Gang's body was sent flying. He ruthlessly crashed into the wall of the VIP lounge. Muhan snorted. His body moved and he followed up with another attack. With a twist of his wrist, he once again sent a palm strike towards Song Gang's chest. Boom. However, in the next instant, a figure flashed in front of Song Gang. Elder Xian's figure appeared before Song Gang. At the same time, Elder Xian sent out a palm strike and forcefully received Mu Han's mighty palm strike. Although Elder Xian managed to receive Mu Han's palm strike, he was also ruthlessly pushed back. With a bang, his skinny body crashed into the wall. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of Elder Xian's mouth. Cough cough. Teacher Mu, where it is possible to make mistakes, one should be lenient. After all, you are a 9-star half-martial emperor, and the renowned teacher Mu of the desolate ancient city. He has already been injured, and you have already vented your anger. Right now, the auction still has to continue. I hope that teacher Mu can stop now. Enough, meddlesome fellow. How much is your face worth? I will let him off for today's matter. I believe that he will also understand the difference between an 8-star half-martial emperor and a 9-star half-martial emperor. Before Elder Xian's words left his mouth, Mu Han snorted coldly. Due to the envelopment of the spirit formation, Mu Han did not discover Elder Xian's timely arrival. Otherwise, he would not have continued to attack. No matter what, Elder Xian was an elder of the Yunin Pavilion. Even if he didn't give face to the monk, he still had to give face to the Buddha. As long as he gave face to the Yunin Pavilion, Mu Han would naturally not continue to attack. Haha, that's good. However, Teacher Mu, this old man still has a sentence that I need to correct. Indeed, you do not need to give me any face. However, what I wanted to say earlier was, give face to my master, and let this matter go. Once those words were said, not only Mu Han, even Yan Bing and the other two behind him immediately revealed expressions of shock. When they thought of the master of the Yunin Pavilion, they all felt endlessly terrified in their hearts. However, just as the three of them were pondering whether or not Elder Xian's words were true, Elder Xian extended his hand into his sleeve and took out a completely lustrous jade fan. As for this jade fan, it was Luo Jin's jade whisking fan. Chapter 282. This is the whisk jade fan. Seeing the whisk jade fan in Elder Xian's hand, Mu Han and the others immediately turned pale with fright. They involuntarily let out an exclamation. A deep solemnness surged into their eyes when they looked at Elder Xian. They did not feel solemn for Elder Xian. Instead, they felt solemn for the owner of the whisk jade fan in his hand. Within the ancient Wildland city, everyone knew of the strength of the Yunin Pavilion. The Yunin Pavilion was a powerful faction that had a true elite Dodi as its guardian. Although they were unable to explore the true enormous outline of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion with their strength, the strength of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion had definitely exceeded their imagination based on the fact that they had a Dodi. The whisk jade fan has appeared in the ancient Wildland city. Don't tell me, he has returned. Yan Bing, who was behind Mu Han, could not help but exclaim. When he said this, his indifferent face finally couldn't help but be moved. But that fellow, didn't he go to another region? Why did he return? Old Devil, who stared intently at the whisk jade fan in Elder Xian's hand as he spoke with a surprised tone. He has left. Naturally, he can return. I'm afraid that this is my negligence. I should have thought of this earlier. At this moment, MOD's face revealed a solemn expression. Compared to Yan Bing and Old Devil he was even more terrified of the person in the Yunin Pavilion. He was helpless. Who asked him to be the weakest among them? MOD's words had just sounded when Mu Han, who was facing Elder Xian at the front of the group, immediately sensed a trace of something else. He tilted his head slightly and stared at MOD from the corner of his eyes. He frowned and asked, "What is going on? Speak clearly." Hearing this, MOD's originally tightly knitted eyebrows became even more twisted. He nodded slightly as he recalled the time when he had just arrived at the ancient Wildland city a few months ago. At that time, he was in the Yunin Pavilion. As a rank 2 alchemist, he was highly respected by everyone. That day, the Yunin Pavilion suddenly closed its doors and prohibited anyone from entering the Yunin Pavilion. Xiao Yan was led in by Elder Xian. MOD clearly remembered that Elder Xian had told him that the pavilion master of the Yunin Pavilion had returned. However, the two of them had only said a few words in a hurry, so MOD did not take it to heart. Now that he thought about it carefully, What Elder Xian had said at that time was definitely true. When Mu Han and the others heard that Elder Xian had brought Xiao Yin into the Yunin Pavilion, they could not help but be slightly shocked. It turned out that Xiao Yin had already gotten involved with the Yunin Pavilion a few months ago. Moreover, from the looks of it, the pavilion master was probably the one who had ordered the Yunin Pavilion to close its doors that day. After knowing this, Mu Han's heart gradually cleared up. This auction was not as simple as it seemed. He believed that the array outside the VIP room was definitely not from the Tianyan auction house. If that was the case, it could only be him. Why? Why are there so many people helping him? Who exactly is this brat? When he thought of this and thought of the group of half-step emperors around Xiao Yin, even with Mu Han's mental state, he could not help but be secretly shocked. Hehe, Master Mu, since that is the case, this old man will not disturb you any further. I heard that Master Mu is also here for the Void Lightning Pool invitation. Haha, this old man wishes Master Mu a fruitful return. While Mu Han was in a daze, Elder Xian's faint laughter rang out again, pulling Mu Han back from his inner world. After saying that, Elder Xian could not help but cough lightly twice. Then he pulled Song Gang, who was beside him, and was about to leave. Wait. Seeing that Elder Xian was about to leave, Mu Han hurriedly stopped him. However, in the next instant, he realized that his tone was not right. He quickly corrected himself and smiled at Elder Xian. Hehe, Brother Xianyi, please wait. This old man admits that he had accidentally hurt the two of you in a fit of anger. If there was any negligence, I hope that the two of you can forgive me. Master Mu, there is no need to beat around the bush. Just say what you want to say. Elder Xian and Elder Xian weren't surprised by Mu Han's sudden politeness. They had seen many people like him, and they were already used to it. Hearing Elder Xian's straightforward words, Mu Han could not help but reveal an awkward smile. Then he did not waste any more time and directly said, Brother Xianyi, I have admired your master for a long time. However, he has always been elusive. From the beginning to the end, I have never seen him even once. May I have the opportunity to see the pavilion master's true appearance today? While speaking, Mu Han's face was filled with sincerity. Those who did not know would really think that he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. However, Luo Jin sneered in his heart. This scene was also within Luo Jin's expectations. Meeting was fake, but probing was real. Mu Han did not expect to be able to meet the pavilion master of the Yunin Pavilion. He only wanted to confirm his own thoughts. This? I'm afraid that is not possible. Master Mu, you should know that my master is a loner and his whereabouts are secretive. Usually it is very difficult for us to meet him. As long as it is someone he wants to meet, he will not allow anyone to disturb him. However, if he does not say that he wants to meet or is not willing to meet, it is impossible no matter how capable you are. At this moment, my master is meeting with Sir Yen Xiao alone. Therefore, Xianyi frowned as he looked at Mu Han. His face revealed a troubled expression. Mu Han's request seemed to be giving him a headache. If that is the case then, Brother Xianyi, I will not trouble you. After all, the pavilion master is an extremely powerful person. His decision is not something that you and I can influence. Mu Han sighed helplessly as a look of disappointment appeared on his face. Yan Bing and Old Monster who were behind him, saw everything and remembered it in their hearts. If that is the case, I will not stay any longer. Master Mu, please have a seat. I will leave now. As he spoke, Xianyi pulled Song Gang with one hand and stepped out of the VIP room. When they reached the door, Mu Han, who was behind them, once again spoke out to stop them. Brother Xianyi, please wait. Xianyi and Song Gang, who had their backs facing Mu Han, frowned slightly and exchanged glances. Their hearts were filled with suspicion. What exactly was this fellow planning? Xianyi turned around and saw that Mu Han had already arrived behind them. He could not help but frown. Just as he was about to speak, Mu Han extended his hand. A light flashed in his palm, and two Longan-sized round elixirs appeared in Mu Han's hand. Brother Xianyi, you and Brother Song Gang. Who is your brother? Before Xianyi finished speaking, Song Gang shouted angrily. The invisible pressure that was contained in his voice caused the entire VIP room to tremble slightly. Mu Han was also shocked by this sudden shout. However, he quickly reacted and did not reveal a trace of dissatisfaction on his old face. Instead, he opened his mouth and laughed. Haha, yes. The two of you are more or less injured. I have 2 Emperor tier elixirs here. Take it as compensation. Hearing these words, Songgang's face remained expressionless. Clearly, he did not care. However, Xianyi gently raised his eyebrows and could not help but feel a little surprised. To be honest, although the two of them had each suffered a blow from Muhan, they were not seriously injured. However, they did not expect Muhan to be even more excited than them. He had taken out 2 Emperor tier elixirs in one go. 2 light injuries in exchange for 2 Emperor tier elixirs. This was a great deal. Xianyi smiled. He was not as indifferent as Songgang. Instead, he warmly received the elixirs from Muhan and placed them into his storage ring in front of Muhan. Muhan once again awkwardly smiled when he saw this. Xianyi also followed suit and smiled. After which, he ceased procrastinating and ignored Muhan. He turned around, stepped out of the shattered stone door, and walked toward the VIP room where Xiao Yan and Luo Jin were located. Seeing Xianyi and Songgang disappear around the corner of the tunnel, the smile on Muhan's face gradually disappeared. It was replaced by a gloomy expression. Muhan's icy cold gaze swept across MOD as he turned around, causing the latter's entire body to shiver. Muhan panted as he looked at the destroyed furniture in the VIP room. He recalled what Xianyi had said earlier, and the anger that he had suppressed for a long time finally erupted at this moment. Take a seat, your ass. The hoarse roar was deafening in this small space. Yan Bing and the other two looked at each other, but they tactfully remained silent. Chapter 283. In the VIP room, Xiao Yan and Luo Jin frowned as they looked at the 2 people in front of them, especially the trace of blood at the corner of Elder Xian's mouth. The 2 of them had many thoughts running through their minds. After looking at each other, Luo Jin was the first to speak. What happened? Why are the 2 of you injured? Hearing this, Elder Xian smiled faintly and shook his head. It's fine. It's just a small injury. We only took a hit from that guy. It's not a big deal. Furthermore, at the end of his sentence, Elder Xian paused for a moment. He looked at Songgang beside him and smiled. Furthermore, we deserve those 2 hits. It can even be said that we made a huge profit. As he said this, Elder Xian flipped his palm, and 2 round pills the size of a longan appeared in his palm. These were the Emperor-level pills that Muhan had given them earlier. Seeing these 2 pills, Xiao Yan immediately recognized that they were Emperor-level pills. However, he was still a little surprised. He did not know why Elder Xian had taken out these 2 Emperor-level pills. Haha, 1 pill per palm. This is even faster than the auction. An expression of understanding immediately surfaced on Xiao Yan's and Muhan's faces when they heard this. It was likely that Muhan's heart was incomparably depressed at this moment. Originally, he wanted to secretly tamper with Xiao Yan's auction and lower the price of every item so that the auction could not proceed normally. However, who would have thought that the pavilion master of the Yunin Pavilion would appear out of nowhere? The appearance of the Yunin Pavilion's pavilion master was like a blow to his head. Instantly, all his thoughts were scattered. Muhan knew that with the pavilion master of the Yunin Pavilion present at the auction, no one would be able to secretly tamper with the auction. Even if it was him, Master Mu, who was revered by everyone in the ancient wilderness city. Haha, this is all thanks to young Master's foresight. You knew that Muhan would not be willing to be controlled by others. Elder Xian looked at Luo Jin with admiration and smiled. Luo Jin shook his head and smiled faintly, not saying anything more. After this incident, the auction went on smoothly for the next few days. Countless items were sold by the auctioneer every day. However, the entire auction house was still filled to the brim. It was even to the extent that during these past few days, many half-step emperors from all over had rushed over to participate in the auction after hearing the news. In a short few days, the auction house's income was comparable to half a year's income. Other than these, the auctions in the auction ground were still continuing. The storage ring that Xiao Yan had handed to Songgang still had nearly 1/3 of the auction items remaining. Once all of these things were auctioned off, just what kind of wealth would it be? Songgang's eyes lit up. Following the silence of Muhan and the others, Xiao Yan and the others also felt a sense of relief. The feeling of being constantly remembered was not a good feeling. During these past few days, Xiao Yan did not do any senseless training. Currently, his strength was at the peak of the 3-star half-step Emperor realm. Slow training would no longer have any obvious effect. Moreover, the path of cultivation was about progressing step by step. Risking one's life to train might not necessarily bring about a powerful cultivation. Appropriately relaxing oneself might also bring about unexpected gains. Of course, this kind of thing was something that could only be encountered by chance and not sought. Xiao Yan did not gain much during these few days. Even when he was chatting and laughing with Luo Jin, he did not find out the slightest bit of information about the faction behind Luo Jin. With regards to this, Xiao Yan was not surprised. Unknowingly, time quietly passed by. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Out of the 6 invitations to the Void Lightning Pool, only one was left after the previous 5 days of auctioning 1 invitation per day. It was still unknown who the final Void Lightning Reservoir invitation would end up in. However, in a certain VIP room, 4 people had never left. From the beginning to the end, they had not auctioned off a single item. On the 6th day, after an entire day of intense competition, all of the auction items had been auctioned off. At this moment, there was only 1 Void Lightning Reservoir invitation left in the storage ring. This was the final Void Lightning Reservoir invitation among the 6 Void Lightning Reservoir invitations. It was also the final item of this auction. The atmosphere in the auction house was still fiery. The closer it was to the end, the crazier the hearts of these people became. After all, there were only 6 Void Lightning Reservoir invitations. The 5 Void Lightning Reservoir invitations that were auctioned off had already ended up in the hands of others. The rules of the auction house were to keep the identity of the auctioneer a secret. Thus, the whereabouts of the 5 Void Lightning Reservoir invitations were unknown. At this moment, the group of half-step emperors that did not obtain any Void Lightning Reservoir invitation could only cast their gazes onto the final Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. This final Void Lightning Reservoir invitation would determine whether or not they would be able to enter the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. It was also because of this that the value of this Void Lightning Reservoir invitation had greatly surpassed its original value. On the auction stage, the old man still had an unhurried expression on his face. He did not seem to care about the anxious gazes of the people below the stage. After a long while, the old man finally slowly took out the final Void Lightning Reservoir invitation from his storage ring. When the crowd saw the silver Void Lightning Reservoir invitation, they instantly stood up once again. Their eyes were filled with excitement and fanaticism as they looked at the old man. Haha, the next item to be auctioned off is the final item of today's auction. It is also the final item of this auction. I believe that most of the people here are here for this final item, the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. As the old man spoke, a few figures slowly walked out from the shadows somewhere in the auction house. It was Mu Han and the others. Before the old man took out the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation, they had already left the VIP room. In order to ensure that the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation would fall into their hands, even though the pavilion master of the Union Pavilion was still present in the auction house, they still had to appear to intimidate the crowd. The old man on the auction stage clearly noticed Mu Han and the others. When they appeared, he could not help but frown. However, he quickly relaxed his brows and ignored them. The old man slowly swept his gaze across the crowd below the stage. When he saw the expressions on everyone's faces, the old man smiled faintly and said, "Haha, everyone, this old man will not waste any more time on pleasantries. I believe that everyone knows the rules of the auction house. No one is allowed to threaten others in the auction house. If anyone is found to have done so, they will be forcefully expelled from the auction house, and will never be allowed to step into the Tianyan auction house again." Although this was already a rule that everyone knew, the old man still repeated it in the face of the current situation. At the end of his words, the old man's gaze landed on Mu Han, who was standing at the side of the auction house. When he saw that Mu Han did not make any other moves, the old man's eyes narrowed slightly, after which he slowly withdrew his gaze and looked at the crowd again, saying, "As for the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation, this old man does not need to introduce it further. the owner of the last Void Lightning Reservoir invitation, has made a request. As it is a barter, the owner of the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation wants to exchange it for an Emperor-grade pill formula, or an Emperor-grade pill formula. Other than that, he will not exchange it for anything else. Once the old man's words were spoken, the hearts of everyone present were immediately shocked. Although the people present were all half-martial emperors, very few of them were alchemists. Even if there were alchemists, they would at the very most be level 9 alchemists. Thus, practically no one present was able to take out an Emperor-level medicinal pill and an Emperor-level medicinal pill formula. Xiao Yan's request had instantly defeated most of the half-martial emperors present. If one was not an alchemist, it was impossible for them to have the opportunity to bid for the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation. Only MOD, who was standing at the side of the auction house, had a gloomy expression on his old face at this moment. Xiao Yan's actions showed that he did not intend to auction the Void Lightning Reservoir invitation to the half-martial emperors present. Xiao Yan's request was directed at him. MOD. Chapter 284. In the Heavenly Cloud auction house, the old man was currently holding up the final Void Lightning Pool invitation. His deep eyes swept across the entire auction house. After a few breaths he shouted, "The final round of the auction, the Void Lightning Pool invitation, begins now." Whoosh! Although the requirements for the auction of the Void Lightning Pool invitation were extraordinary, it did not stop the half-emperors from feeling excited. A portion of them were hesitantly rubbing the storage rings on their hands. There might be Emperor-grade pill formulas or Emperor-grade pills in those rings. Those were all items that could be auctioned off for the Void Lightning Pool invitation. However, it was also because of this that these people were even more hesitant. Even a half-martial monarch wouldn't be able to obtain monarch-grade pills or pill recipes so easily. At this moment, those who possessed Emperor-grade pills or pill formulas had all exchanged their blood for them. Some might even have risked their lives in order to obtain them. In short, although they possessed Emperor-grade pills or pill formulas that made people envious, they had not obtained them easily. It was also because of this that they treasured the treasures in their hands even more. Although the Void Lightning Pool invitation was extremely tempting, at the same time, they were also aware of the importance of Emperor-grade pills and pill formulas. Emperor-grade pills were miraculous and could allow a half-emperor to recover in the shortest amount of time. In the face of Emperor-grade pills, it was not an exaggeration to say that the dead and the dead could be reborn. At the side of the auction house, MOD and the other half-emperors were indifferent to this. Yan Bing and Old Monster, who were also not in the mood to care. This was a matter between Muhan and MOD. Naturally, there was no need for them to interfere. If it did not concern them, there was no need for them to worry. Although they were currently in the same camp, it was difficult to predict each other's thoughts. If they could ignore it, they would naturally be too lazy to do so. Muhan was not anxious at all. If he wanted to obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation, with his wealth, he could still take out a few Emperor-grade pills. This could be seen from the pills that he had given to Elder Xian and Old Monster who. On the other hand, MOD was patiently waiting for an opportunity. He was waiting for the moment when the lightning invitation could no longer be auctioned off. At that time, all he needed to do was to take out an Emperor-grade elixir. Regardless of its quality, he would be able to obtain the lightning invitation at the lowest price. On the auction stage, the old man could not help but frown when he saw that the crowd below had no intention of bidding even though their faces were burning with excitement. He naturally knew that it was impossible for all of them to have an Emperor-grade elixir, but it was also impossible for them to not have one. The reason why no one was bidding now was because they were still hesitating. Everyone, you should know that regardless of whether it is the Emperor-grade elixir or the pill formula, at the end of the day, they are merely worldly possessions. There is no need to mention the Emperor-grade elixir, but even the Emperor-grade elixir can only be used once and can only save you once. The old man's sharp gaze swept across the audience, and his slightly hoarse voice sounded quite infectious. The pill formulas are useless, and the medicinal pills have been used up. At that time, if all of you are faced with a life and death calamity once more, then what will all of you do? In the Yuanwu continent, strength reigned supreme. In the end, whether one lived or died depended on strength. Only the strong had the right to judge his own life and death. What everyone here lacks is not these life-saving pills, but real power. After a domineering shout, the old man's gaze swept across the audience again. Then he fell silent and did not say anything else. When the crowd heard this, many people seemed to have a sudden epiphany in their hearts. Although the old man's words were for the sake of auctioning off the lightning invitation, it was undeniable that what he said was not impossible. No matter how good a treasure was, it could only be used for temporary benefits. Only with a powerful cultivation could one stand in an invincible position. Only with powerful strength could one have the confidence to say that one's life was in one's own hands and not in the hands of the heavens. I bid an emperor-grade elixir. After a moment of silence, a soft clapping sound was finally emitted from the auction ground. Even so, this sound could be considered as a clap of thunder in the auction ground. I bid an emperor-grade spirit cleansing pill. Humph. So what if it's an emperor-grade elixir? Whether it's good or bad, it still depends on the quality and medicinal properties of the elixir. Your spirit cleansing pill is just an ordinary healing elixir, but this old man has a Daogu pill. It can revive the dead and is a top-grade healing elixir among the emperor-grade elixirs. It's many times better than your elixir. This old man is willing to bid 2 emperor-grade elixirs. I have a scroll of elixir recipes. In an instant, the atmosphere in the auction house became heated once again. In order to fight for the last void lightning pool invitation, everyone took out their trump cards. Various emperor-grade elixirs and emperor-grade elixir recipes appeared one after another, causing many people in the auction house to be dazzled by the variety of items. It was difficult to imagine that an ordinary half-martial emperor, who usually kept a low profile, would actually take out various emperor tier pill formulas and medicinal pills in succession at this moment. Even MOD couldn't help but feel astonished by this scene. Some of these people had more emperor-grade elixir recipes than MOD, a rank 2 alchemist. This caused MOD to feel awkward in his heart. The competition for the lightning invitation lasted for 4 hours. In the end, a person wrapped in a black robe obtained the final victory by using 4 emperor-grade elixir recipes. However, MOD did not make any moves until now. It was as if he had lost confidence in the final lightning invitation. The old man on the auction stage looked around. When he saw MOD's group, he involuntarily frowned. He was secretly surprised in his heart. Could it be that these people had given up on the lightning invitation? I used 4 emperor-grade elixir recipes to obtain the lightning invitation. I believe that no one can offer more than me. The black-robed man stood up. His hoarse voice sounded like a skeleton that had crawled out from a grave. His crooked body made people feel a little strange. However, everyone knew that this was probably a deliberate act by the black-robed man to conceal his identity. The black-robed man's words were heard. However, the scene was indifferent. With their financial resources, they really could not take out more than 4 emperor-grade elixir recipes. The void lightning pool invitation is mine. A strange laughter was heard. The black-robed man flipped his palm in the air. A lustrous jade bottle appeared in his delicate palm. The black-robed man's eyes lit up. A cold smile appeared on his face that was covered under the black robe. Then he waved his sleeve. In a flash, the jade bottle in his hand turned into a streamer and shot into the old man's palm. The old man opened the jade bottle and took a whiff of the elixir fragrance that was emitted. He nodded his head in surprise. These 4 emperor-grade elixir recipes were the best among the emperor-grade elixir recipes. Old man, let's make the final decision. Today's lightning invitation is mine. Chapter 285. When the old man heard this, he turned to look at MOD again. However, he saw that MOD's face was solemn and his hands were twirling under his sleeves. He was hesitant about the 4 emperor-grade elixir pills that the black-robed man had offered. Although he did not have 4 emperor-grade elixir pills, MOD had the emperor-grade elixir pill formula. Needless to say, the value of the emperor-grade elixir pill formula was incomparable to the emperor-grade elixir pill formula. If MOD was willing, he could take out 2 emperor-grade elixir pill formulas to obtain the lightning invitation. However, he was hesitant about who the black-robed man was. After the incident with the attendant outside the VIP room, MOD had a strange feeling when he looked at the hunchbacked man. Muhan frowned. He had the same feeling as MOD. However, he also knew that he had to obtain the Void Lightning Pool invitation. If he lost the Void Lightning Pool invitation, he could only turn his attention to Zhang Hao, who was beside Yin Bing. However, time waits for no one. MOD did not have the time to think about the black-robed man's identity. The old man on the auction stage spoke again. Since that's the case, I hereby announce that the invitation to the Void Lightning Pool will be... Wait. Before the old man could finish his sentence, MOD could not help but interrupt him. I am willing to take out 2 Emperor-grade elixir pills and 1 Emperor-grade elixir pill formula. I believe that you should know the value of the Emperor-grade elixir pill formula. The old man raised his eyebrows. If that was the case, the 4 Emperor-grade elixir pills would not be comparable to MOD's elixir pill formula. I will add 1 more. 5 Emperor-grade elixir pills. MOD's advantage was lost once again. The black-robed man did not seem to care about the Emperor-grade elixir pills. MOD's heart sank. 5 Emperor-grade elixir pills. Where did the black-robed man get his confidence from? Only a fool would exchange 5 Emperor-grade elixir pills for the Void Lightning Pool invitation. Haha, this gentleman is willing to take out 5 Emperor-grade elixir pills. If that is the case, then I will take out 4 Emperor-grade elixir pills and 1 Emperor-grade elixir pill formula. That should be enough. Sire, if you are willing to add 1 more, this old man will give up the Void Lightning Pool invitation. The 4 Emperor-grade elixirs were all that MOD had. As for the Emperor-grade elixir formula, although it was precious, MOD could still afford it. At the very least, other than the elixir formula itself, MOD had already engraved the refining method of the elixir formula in his heart. As MOD's voice sounded, the black-robed man's face, which was hidden under the black robe, revealed a mocking smile. When MOD's voice sounded, a hoarse voice immediately followed. I don't want it. These 3 simple words caused MOD to be stunned. He did not expect that the black-robed person would actually choose to give up in the face of his increase in price. MOD sneered when he saw the black-robed man give up decisively. Competing in alchemy in front of an alchemist was like displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert. However, in the blink of an eye, MOD suddenly reacted. The expression on his old face instantly turned gloomy. He had actually used 4 Emperor-grade elixir pills and 1 Emperor-grade elixir pill formula. These Emperor-grade elixir pill formulas were enough to command several half-emperors at the same time to auction off the Void Lightning Pool invitation that could only be used once by 1 person. One should know that the value of 1 Emperor-grade elixir pill formula and 4 Emperor-grade elixir pills far exceeded the value of the Void Lightning Pool invitation. Haha, Master MOD is willing to use 4 Emperor-grade elixir pills and 1 Emperor-grade elixir pill formula to auction off this Void Lightning Pool invitation. I wonder if anyone is willing to increase the bid? On the auction stage, the old man was grinning from ear to ear as he looked at the crowd below with narrowed eyes. This time around, it was as if the group of half-martial emperors had discussed this beforehand. After a while, not a single one of them made a bid. The old man smiled and nodded. His deep eyes slowly swept across the crowd. In the end, they landed on MOD, who was standing at the side of the auction house. He then opened his mouth and laughed. Congratulations to Master MOD for successfully obtaining the last Void Lightning Pool invitation. Although the auction house's rule was to keep the identity of the auctioneer a secret, MOD and the others were standing there openly. Naturally, no one would be unfamiliar with them. Naturally, there was no need to keep it a secret. As for snatching the items from them, that was naturally even more impossible. Therefore, when the old man spoke, he did not have the slightest scruple. His voice was not loud, but it reverberated throughout the entire auction house. In an instant, the crowd below the stage began to whisper. They looked at MOD as if they were looking at a fool. That was 4 Emperor-grade medicinal pellets, and a scroll of Emperor-grade medicinal pellet recipes. Using so many things in exchange for a Void Lightning Reservoir invitation, the person who would do such a thing was either extremely wealthy and had no lack of Emperor-grade medicinal pellet recipes, or extremely stupid. Obviously, although MOD was a rank 2 alchemist, he was definitely not the former. After all, Even a rank 2 alchemist could not casually take out so many emperor-grade elixir pills. Hearing the mocking and ridiculing voices from the surroundings, Mod's heart burned with anger. He originally thought that he could resolve this matter with 1 or 2 elixir pills. Who knew that a black-robed man would suddenly appear in the end? Not only did he force him to take out all his emperor-grade elixir pills, he even threw in an emperor-grade elixir pill formula. This made him extremely depressed. Mod stood there with a gloomy face. Due to the anger in his heart, Mod's breathing had become abnormally heavy. This also reflected the anger in his heart. When he turned to look, Mod's eyes narrowed slightly. The black-robed man was about to turn and leave the auction house. This made Mod somewhat unhappy. Do you think you can run away? He's just a 1-star half-martial emperor. Beside Mod, Muhan, who had been silent and motionless, finally displayed the confidence of an expert at this crucial moment. He turned his gaze and looked at Old Monster who was beside Yan Bing, and said in an indifferent tone, "Follow him. Wait until he leaves the auction house before you deal with him. Remember, you must first find out his identity." Old Monster who frowned slightly. As an 8-star half-martial emperor, when had he ever been treated with such an attitude? Could it be because he was the weakest among the 3 of them? When he thought of this, Old Monster who could not help but sneer in his heart. This world was truly a dog-eat-dog world. If you don't eat others, others will eat you. At the same time, a ball of fury involuntarily rose in Old Demon Who's heart. However, it was discovered by Yan Bing, who had been secretly observing by the side. She held him down and shook her head in a manner that was undetectable. Only then did Old Demon Who take a step back with a dissatisfied expression. His body gradually distorted and disappeared from the auction house at this moment. Seeing that Old Monster who had left, Muhan let out a disdainful snort. He then turned his gaze to Mod. His eyes were filled with a mysterious smile as he looked at the latter. After that he withdrew his gaze and became silent again. Cuckoo everyone, the auction this time around has unknowingly been going on for 6 days. The old me dares to guarantee that this auction will definitely be the longest and the grandest auction in the past 100 years. After the dust settled on the final lightning invitation, the old man on the auction stage finally laughed out loud and shouted. However, his words had just sounded, and before everyone's emotions could be stirred, the old man once again opened his mouth. According to the old me's thoughts, I think that everyone seated here will return with a full load during these 6 days. High-class chi methods, dough techniques, and even natural treasures. There will be an innumerable number of them during these 6 days. Most of them can be considered the most valuable treasures in the cultivation world. Being able to appear in this auction is a kind of fate. It can also be considered an opportunity for everyone seated here. Of course, we still have to thank the organizer of this auction. The old man's gaze swept over everyone in the auction ground below. The tone of his voice became increasingly excited from low to high, causing the people below the stage to also cry out repeatedly. At the end of his words, the old man paused for a moment. The hand under the old man's sleeves was suddenly extended. He opened his palm and pointed to the empty space beside him, after which he cried out in a stern voice, "Our Mr. Yan Xiao." After his voice sounded, Xiao Yan's body also slowly appeared in the empty space beside him. Chapter 286. Xiao Yan's appearance had once again caused the entire auction ground to become lively. Additionally, the old man was instigating things by the side. Although the auction had already ended at this moment, the atmosphere in the place was still extremely high. Xiao Yan merely smiled faintly in response to this. He received the spatial lightning reservoir invitation from the old man. His eyes turned and looked at Mod's group. He did not hesitate as he took a step forward and walked over. Xiao Yan was only able to clearly see Mod's gloomy expression when he approached. In this somewhat dim environment, Mod's gloomy expression seemed to have merged into one with his surroundings. Xiao Yan coldly laughed in his heart. He was unconcerned about this. He had seen many such people. He had even seen such an expression thousands of times. There was no need for him to see it once or twice. Haha. I heard that Grandmaster Mod used 4 D-tier medicinal pills, and an D-tier pill formula as the price in order to bid for this lightning invitation of mine. TSK, It must be said that Grandmaster MOD is indeed worthy of being a rank 2 alchemist. If we were to compare our wealth, I am still worlds apart from you. Humph. Yen Xiao, I will temporarily hand those things over to you for safekeeping. When the time comes, the old me will naturally take back the principal along with interest. At that time, the old me will make sure that you will not be able to bear the consequences. MOD immediately let out a cold snort when he heard Xiaoyan's provocative words. His aura did not lose out at all. Xiaoyan laughed softly. Soon after, his expression changed slightly. His eyes instantly turned towards Muhan beside MOD. At this moment, the latter was staring at Xiaoyan with an icy cold face. His dense cold gaze caused the circulating dou qi within his body to involuntarily become sluggish. Muhan withdrew his gaze. He was too lazy to bother with Xiaoyan. Out of sight, out of mind. Hence he simply closed his eyes. Only then did Xiaoyan relax his body with perspiration appearing on his forehead. This Muhan was indeed worthy of being a 9-star half-emperor. Just a gaze from him was enough to cause him to feel so exhausted. The difference between him and Yan Bing, who was only 1 star weaker, was like the difference between heaven and earth. Xiaoyan once again looked at MOD. However, he saw that the latter's eyes were also filled with fear when he looked at Muhan. Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes. After all, these people were not on the same side. Even though they were now in the same boat because of MOD, they had never let go of their mutual suspicions. "Oh, Master MOD, please. This is the invitation to the Void Lightning Pool that you won," Xiaoyan said in an indifferent tone as he extended his fair hand in front of MOD and held the Void Lightning Pool invitation between his fingers. When MOD, who was carefully observing Muhan, heard this, his expression changed instantly. Xiaoyan sneered. MOD was even more nervous about Muhan than he was. MOD, who had regained his senses, glared at Xiaoyan. The coldness in his eyes was self-evident. Xiaoyan, on the other hand, was indifferent. He had never taken MOD seriously. "Humph. Since I have won the bid, I will not go back on my word. Why are you so anxious?" MOD's face was gloomy. His sinister eyes stared at Xiaoyan like a wolf. His voice was hoarse because of the anger in his heart. Xiaoyan parted his mouth and smiled. He ignored MOD's eyes, which seemed to want to devour a person. He chuckled and said, "Haha, I am not an impatient person. I also know that Master MOD will not do such a despicable act. However, I have a longing for the Emperor-grade elixir and the Emperor-grade elixir formula. If I can obtain them as soon as possible, it will naturally be better." "Umph. You are really sharp-tongued." MOD was furious. Sparks shot out from his eyes as he reprimanded Xiaoyan. "Take it." With a wave of his sleeve, MOD snatched the lightning invitation from Xiaoyan's hand. A stream of light wrapped in fighting qi shot toward Xiaoyan's face. Xiaoyan's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this. This MOD was really ruthless. If he did not receive it well, the elixir in the jade bottle would be destroyed. Fortunately, with Xiaoyan's current strength, he did not care about this little trick of a 3-star half-martial emperor. Xiaoyan waved his sleeve. Fighting qi surged, and his robe fluttered in the wind. He rolled up his sleeve and sucked the stream of light into his sleeve. Under the support of the dou qi, this soft and weak robe actually became incomparably tough. After the dou qi that wrapped around the jade bottle was completely exhausted and destroyed, Xiaoyan's robe was still completely undamaged. MOD, who saw this scene with his own eyes, could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He did not expect Xiaoyan to be so fierce. However, when Xiaoyan held the jade bottle in his hand and examined it, he confirmed that there were indeed 4 emperor-grade elixirs. Moreover, under Xiaoyan's investigation, the elixir he wanted to see the most was also among them. This made Xiaoyan feel slightly relieved. But then, Xiaoyan turned his gaze to MOD again. His face turned cold as he sneered and said, "You are really ruthless. Didn't you just say that you would leave these things with me for the time being? Aren't you afraid that you will destroy them?" "Hee, if they are really destroyed, then I will just throw them away. They are just small things." MOD looked unusually indifferent. He just wanted to test Xiaoyan's strength. He did not expect that he was really as terrifying as the rumors said. His real strength was far beyond his cultivation on the surface. Humph, I don't care whether you don't care or not. You only handed over 4 Emperor-grade elixirs. Where is the elixir recipe? MOD sneered and said, Do you really think that I am a fool? Do you really think I'm stupid? The Void Lightning Pool invitation is not worth that much. I've already given you 4 Emperor-grade medicinal pills. That's already my biggest concession. Don't push your luck. Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes. MOD was really shameless. He wanted to deny what he had just said in the blink of an eye. However, Xiaoyan did not care about him. He looked at MOD disdainfully and said with a mocking smile, 4 Emperor-grade pills and 1 Emperor-grade pill formula. You said it yourself. Don't tell me that you're going to deny it in the blink of an eye after saying it in front of everyone. MOD frowned. Although it was a little difficult, he was still reluctant to hand over the elixir recipe. After all, it was his life's work. It took him more than half of his life to accumulate it. How could he give it away in a moment? It seems that Master MOD is really stubborn. Since that's the case, let me tell everyone here about you. MOD. Before Xiaoyan could finish his sentence, Muhan, who was standing beside MOD, suddenly opened his eyes. He stared sharply at MOD and said in a domineering tone, No matter what, the right to use the Void Thunder Pool invitation was in Muhan's hands. He did not want to be called a despicable person because of this. As for MOD's elixir recipe, he could not be bothered with it. He only cared about himself. MOD was facing the thousands of people on Xiaoyan's side and Muhan's oppressive aura. He immediately became terrified. MOD helplessly threw a scroll of the D-tier pill formula that he had collected to Xiaoyan. Only then did he cease speaking with a depressed heart. There was only fury in his heart. Muhan was clearly on his side. Why did he actually stand up and speak for Xiaoyan at such a moment? Chapter 287. At the same time that Xiaoyan received the Emperor tier pill formula from MOD's hands in the auction house, 2 mysterious human figures also left the auction house one after another. These 2 people were the black-robed man who had fought with MOD for the lightning invitation at the auction, and Old Demon who had followed behind him. After the black-robed man left the auction house, he hurriedly entered a small alley. His footsteps were light and quick, as though he was hiding from something. However, he also maintained a constant distance from the human figure who was following closely behind him, such that the latter would not lose him. Old Demon who was following closely behind the black-robed man, involuntarily frowned when he sensed this. However, immediately after, the corner of his mouth revealed a smile of understanding. His body moved and he leaped forward to give chase. Just like this, one chased while the other hurried. The 2 human figures tacitly maintained a distance of 100 feet between them. Old Demon who was not anxious. His toes continuously tapped on the ground as his body shot forward and followed closely behind. A moment later, Old Demon who saw that the end of the alley was a dead end. His calm face finally revealed a smile. The 2 human figures gradually paused their footsteps in unison. Old Demon who narrowed his eyes as he looked at the black-robed man who was 100 feet away from him. The corner of his mouth gradually lifted into a smile. He crossed his arms over his chest and laughed. Why aren't you running anymore? The black-robed man gently shook his head when he heard this. His hoarse voice was slowly emitted. You have already obtained the lightning invitation. Why are you still not letting me go? Old Demon who involuntarily laughed when he heard this. The corner of his mouth lifted into a disdainful arc. He looked at the black-robed man opposite him with a mocking smile and said coldly, You have lured the old me here. Why do you need to be so secretive? The others may not recognize you, but the old me can recognize that you are Yin Xiao. The black-robed man's expression involuntarily changed when these words were uttered. Surprise rose in his heart. Fortunately, with the cover of the black robe, Old Demon who could not see the change in his expression. Haha, you think too highly of me. That Yin Xiao is a 3-star half-martial emperor. At this moment he is still in the auction house. As for me, I am merely a 1-star half-martial emperor. How can I be Yin Xiao? The pair of eyes under the black robe slowly narrowed into a thin line. The hoarse voice once again rang out. That voice caused one's heart to tremble. Doppelganger. The expression under the black robe instantly changed and he frowned. He slowly raised his calm eyes and stared at old weirdo who. Clone, you are Yan Zhao's clone. I have seen that clone once before. His strength is that of a one-star half-martial emperor. Yet, after you discovered that I was following you, you did not run away and instead deliberately led me here. This means that you are also very curious about me. Why did I not attack you the moment you left the auction house? Old weirdo who stared at the black-robed man with a look of certainty. He had already determined that the black-robed man before him was definitely Xiao Yan. Heh. This time, a clear and faint laugh came from under the black robe. This caused the smile on old monster whose face to gradually become wider. I did not expect that I would still be recognized even though I have dressed up like this. I must say that your observation is really meticulous. If it was not for you, no one would be able to guess that I am Yan Xiao. Xiao Yan, who was under the black robe, took off the hat on his head with one hand, revealing a delicate and pretty face. Although he had been recognized, he did not appear to be at a loss. In any case, the auction had already ended. Even if MOD and the others knew that he was Xiao Yan, it was already too late. In addition, there was no evidence to prove that the black-robed man who had appeared in the auction house was Xiao Yan. Hence, they could not do anything to Xiao Yan. Furthermore, Xiao Yan was currently accompanying MOD and the others in the auction house. Everyone present could testify that MOD could not do anything to Xiao Yan. Indeed. Although he already knew the answer in his heart, old weirdo who could not help but laugh when he saw Xiao Yan appear. Xiao Yan also smiled faintly when he heard this. He did not say anything unnecessary and went straight to the point. Tell me, why didn't you make a move after following me for so long? They must have a motive for letting you follow me. Old weirdo whose lips curled into a smile as he stared at Xiao Yan. However, he did not answer the question and chuckled softly. Do you know why Yan Bing and Mu Han wanted to attack you? Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows as he smiled faintly. He looked at old weirdo who with a slightly surprised gaze and said, Is it not because of MOD? Old weirdo sneered when he heard this and said, Yes and no. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. Although he had some guesses in his heart regarding this question, he still wanted to hear the most accurate answer. Although the killing intent in Yan Bing's eyes was not as intense as Mu Han's when he faced you, I believe that you were able to tell. The reason why he helped MOD deal with you was because you killed 2 of his capable subordinates. As far as I know, those 2 men died without even leaving behind their corpses. When old weirdo who finished speaking, the expression in Xiao Yan's eyes immediately froze. He understood in his heart. How could old weirdo who not know when old weirdo who had already said so much? Fong Sun and Wang Qi. Old weirdo who chuckled as he stared at Xiao Yan with his bright eyes. The meaning in his eyes was self-evident. When Xiao Yan saw old weirdo whose gaze, he nodded thoughtfully in his heart. Then he seemed to have thought of something. He raised his gaze and looked at old weirdo who opposite him. The reason why Mu Han attacked me was because of the formation master that I casually killed that day. It was Wu Mahui, Mu Han's only disciple. His most beloved disciple died in your hands. Naturally, he would not let you go. Xiao Yan's voice had just sounded when the words from old demon whose mouth were spat out. This caused Xiao Yan to immediately be enlightened. The doubts in his heart were also completely resolved at this moment. However, as these questions were answered, a new question arose in Xiao Yan's heart. But why are you telling me this? The 2 of us are not on the same side. Don't tell me that you betrayed MOD and want to help me instead. Xiao Yan's eyes stared intently at old demon who as he spoke with a cold expression. Haha, that is the truth. Men die for wealth, and birds die for food. I don't want to be a fool. Xiao Yan sneered and said, If you take someone's money, then you have to help them. Who would dare to kill you? MOD? Old weirdo who shook his head with disdain. He really did not care about MOD. Among the few of them, the only one that could make him take MOD seriously was not Yan Bing, but Mu Han. He wouldn't dare, but Mu Han would. MOD is an idiot. He provoked Mu Han, the king of hell. Sooner or later he will have to pay the price. Old weirdo who narrowed his eyes. It was as if he had already seen MOD's death. A greedy man is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. If one wanted to obtain something, he had to fight for it himself. Blindly relying on others would only lead him into the abyss. MOD was like this. He wants to use Muhan to get rid of you and obtain the heavenly flame in your body. Humph. However, he forgot that Muhan is a 9-star half-martial emperor. Wu Mahui's death was planned by him. How could Muhan let him go? I'm afraid that he will be the first to die in the end. With Muhan's evil heart, he will definitely swallow us one by one. Old weirdo who said with a gloomy face. His words were filled with disdain for MOD and the others. However, when he mentioned Muhan, his face would involuntarily reveal a fearful expression. Xiaoyan laughed coldly in his heart. Although this group of people had come together in order to deal with Xiaoyan, they did not have the slightest trust between them. This kind of group might appear extremely strong on the surface, but it had actually already fallen apart. Chapter 288. Outside of the Heavenly Cloud auction house, in an empty alley, two figures were standing face to face. Heh, since you don't trust Muhan, why don't you just leave? Why bother looking for me? After hearing old eccentric Hu's words, Xiaoyan could not help but sneer. His tone was filled with ridicule. Hee, like I said earlier, I came here for money. I helped MOD because he was able to pay me before. Now that the situation has changed, I naturally cannot lose out too much. Old eccentric Hu looked at Xiaoyan and revealed an evil smile on his face. His appearance was that of a vile person. Xiaoyan slightly nodded his head and narrowed his eyes. He did not dare to underestimate old eccentric Hu in front of him. Being able to cultivate to an 8-star half-martial emperor was already extremely difficult. However, old eccentric Hu was still able to be so cautious. It was not difficult to see that his future might not be inferior to Muhan's. In the narrow alley, the two figures looked at each other. After a long while, they both burst into laughter. After the laughter, Xiaoyan's expression quickly returned to normal. He smiled and said, "If you want to change bosses, that is naturally not a problem." After saying this, old eccentric Hu appeared to be a lot calmer. He knew that Xiaoyan still had something else to say. Xiaoyan also smiled in tacit understanding. He raised his gaze and stared at old eccentric Hu. Only then did he continue to speak. "However, the problem is, how can I trust you? Based on what you said to me earlier, it was all within my expectations. If you want me to trust you, you must take out something that is sufficient to convince me." Hearing these words, old eccentric Hu laughed softly. His gaze was also fixed on Xiaoyan. He said, "Of course there are things that I can't really talk about. If you are talking about substantial things, this old man is naturally unable to take them out. The only thing I can tell you is that other than the four of us that you have met this time, there is also a 7-star half-martial emperor in Muzhuang." Hearing those words, Xiaoyan immediately started to frown. Never would he have imagined that these people would actually hold back in order to deal with him. Although they were not 8-star half-martial emperors, they were still people capable of overturning the entire battle. Thus, Xiaoyan could not ignore them. Thus, Xiaoyan could only hope that the strength of that 7-star half-martial emperor was not what he had imagined it to be. As if he had seen through Xiaoyan's thoughts, before the expression on Xiaoyan's face changed, old monster Hu grinned and poured a bucket of cold water over his head. That 7-star half-martial emperor possesses the strength of a peak late-stage half-martial emperor. He is merely a step away from breaking through to 8-star half-martial emperor. As long as he enters the void lightning pool, he will definitely break through to 8-star half-martial emperor. At that time, you will not only be facing the three of us. Xiaoyan's expression was grave as he nodded. There was no need for old demon Hu to remind him of this. Once the other party had an additional 8-star half-martial emperor, this kind of frightening reinforcement would have a suppressive effect on the battle. Moreover, there was also Yan Bing, who was also a peak 8-star half-martial emperor. Once the two of them made a breakthrough, even if Xiaoyan had also broken through to a 4-star half-martial emperor, he would definitely not be a match for them even if he were to add his abilities. Old monster whose reminder allowed Xiaoyan to foresee the overall strength of MOD's side. This also allowed him to make some preparations before entering the lightning pool. Only by knowing one's own strength and one's enemy could one be undefeated. If it wasn't for old monster whose words today, Xiaoyan would have truly believed that the other side only had 3 high-level half-martial emperors. Once that was the case, when the lightning pool opened, MOD and the others would catch them unprepared. This would cause Xiao Yan's side to fall into a disadvantageous position. Thus, to the current Xiao Yan, these words of Old Monster Who were undoubtedly helpful. Since you've said so much, let's talk about your conditions. Xiao Yun withdrew his thoughts and his gaze once again landed on Old Monster Who. He did not believe that this fellow before him would reveal this information to him for free. Old Monster Who grinned and his scarlet tongue licked his lips. Soon after, he raised his gaze and slowly said, "You're really straightforward. It's much easier than MOD. I won't say much. For Emperor-grade medicinal pills. This old man guarantees that I won't attack you when the time comes." Once these words were spoken, Xiao Yan immediately frowned. His eyes narrowed into a thin line as he stared at Old Monster Who with a pair of sharp eyes. However, Old Monster Who acted as if it was nothing. "You really want to be the Oriole?" Xiao Yan said in an indifferent tone. Old Monster Who sneered and fearlessly stared at Xiao Yan. He sneered and said, "Ha ha ha, it's just a mere worldly possession." "Ha ha, they are merely worldly possessions. Why do you need to care so much? With your current wealth, you do not lack these things. Moreover, if I were to take action at that time, you would not even be able to keep your life. What can you do with these medicinal pills? For Emperor-grade medicinal pills in exchange for your life. This is a very worthwhile deal." Xiao Yan stared at Old Monster Who and sneered. He stretched out his hand and casually clenched his fist in the air in front of him. With a flash of light, a jade bottle appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. This was the jade bottle that Xiao Yan had thrown to the old man at the auction house. It contained 4 Emperor-grade medicinal pills. Old Monster Whose eyes lit up when he saw this. Greed shot out from his eyes. "Ha! The reward that MOD promised you is probably only half of what you asked from me. For Emperor-grade medicinal pills. You're really asking for too much." Old Demon Whose expression instantly changed when Xiao Yan's words were uttered. However, before he could open his mouth, Xiao Yan quickly opened his mouth and said, "For Emperor-grade medicinal pills are enough for me to find 2 high-level half-step emperors to protect me outside. Moreover, they will definitely go all out to protect me. So, why do you think you should ask for 4 Emperor-grade medicinal pills?" Old Monster Whose face changed. Xiao Yan was right. For Emperor-grade medicinal pills were indeed enough to hire 2 high-level half-step emperors outside. However, if Xiao Yan only gave him 2 Emperor-grade medicinal pills as a reward, he would be somewhat unwilling to accept it. Old Monster Whose face was gloomy. His tightly knitted brows were constantly relaxed and knitted together. After a long while, he sighed helplessly and looked at Xiao Yan with a frown, saying, 3 Emperor-grade medicinal pills. 3 Emperor-grade pills. That's the only concession I can make. If you're still not willing to accept my offer, then there's no need to talk about our deal. Okay, I can give you 3 Emperor-grade medicinal pills. However, you have to promise me one thing." As soon as Old Monster Who finished speaking, Xiao Yan continued to speak. This made Old Monster Who had just recovered, frown again. Xiao Yan ignored him. After pausing for 2 seconds, he continued to speak. "I can't possibly give you 3 Emperor-grade medicinal pills for nothing just because I'll find out about it sooner or later. Therefore, I want you to help me once when we're fighting. If you're unwilling to do so, we'll just forget about this deal. At most, we'll fight to the death and you won't get anything." This time Old Monster Who lowered his head. His face was somewhat gloomy. "Boy, are you threatening me?" "I'm just making a request." Xiao Yan looked at Old Monster Who calmly. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. There was no flaw in his expression. The two of them remained silent as they looked at each other. Neither of them spoke first. For a moment, the two of them were surrounded by silence, and their foreheads were already covered with dense beads of sweat. Whoever lost his cool first would be the first to lose. The result would be decided by the other party. Imperceptibly, the heartbeats of the two became faster and faster as time passed. The violent heartbeats could be heard clearly within 10 steps of the two of them. Under such circumstances, the surrounding atmosphere gradually became heavy. Drip! Bean-sized beads of sweat fell on a stone between Old Monster Who's feet. More sweat flowed down along the dense wrinkles on his old face. Another drop of sweat dripped down. On Xiao Yan's side, the same thing was happening. Forget it. Since you are not willing, I will not force you. However, I feel that what you said to me today is a good reason. Once the two of you have an internal conflict, I think that it will collapse on its own. At that time, it will save me a lot of trouble. Retracting his gaze, Xiaoyan seemed to have given up decisively. He could not be bothered with Old Monster Who. He turned around and was about to leave. When Old Monster Who saw this, his expression changed. He did not expect Xiaoyan to be so ruthless. After failing to cooperate, he wanted to harm him. Then he thought about Muhan's ruthlessness. Looking at Xiaoyan and the 3 Emperor-grade elixir pills in front of him, Old Monster Whose attitude finally softened. I promise you, if there is a need, I will take action. However, I will only take action once. After the lightning pool is out, we will not owe each other anything. Great! Before Old Monster Who could finish his words, Xiaoyan turned around and looked at Old Monster Who with a smile. Old Monster Who could only sigh helplessly. He originally wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to gain some benefits. However, he did not expect that he would be forcefully pulled into the boat by Xiaoyan. When Old Monster Who saw Xiaoyan's victorious smile, he sneered in his heart. Even without me, a 9-star half-martial emperor is not someone who can be defeated by numbers alone. Haha, whether I can deal with it or not, we'll see when the time comes. I only hope that when the time comes, you won't think of betraying me. Otherwise, I'll make sure you die a horrible death. Trust me. Xiaoyan smiled faintly. His eyes were fixed on Old Monster Who. A heavenly flame appeared in the depths of his eyes. The threat in his words was undeniable. When Old Monster Who saw this, he was secretly shocked. From his tone, it did not seem like he was lying. With Xiaoyan's reputation, Old Monster Who was certain that Xiaoyan was not lying to him. When Old Monster Who thought of this, he was shocked. He could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Chapter 289. With the end of the auction, everyone left one after another. Xiaoyan chatted with Luo Jin and the others for a long time before leaving the auction house by himself and returning to the Alchemist Guild. As the chief alchemist of the Alchemist Guild and the champion of the Alchemist competition, Xiaoyan had only been to the Alchemist Guild 3 or 4 times despite being a member of the Alchemist Guild. Even the few times he had entered the Alchemist Guild were unknown to outsiders. As a result, Xiaoyan's swaggering entrance to the Alchemist Guild alarmed many of the other alchemists in the Alchemist Guild. Even though these people had seen Xiaoyan before, most of them had only seen him from afar and couldn't see him clearly. Now that Xiaoyan was walking so close to the Alchemist Guild, many of them quickly rushed over after hearing the news. When everyone saw Xiaoyan, the renowned Class 2 alchemist in the ancient city of Wilderness, they couldn't help but feel surprised at how young Xiaoyan was. At such a young age, not only had he cultivated his alchemy skills to such a level, but he was also not at a disadvantage in the field of Do Qi. This kind of terrifying growth rate made some of the older half-emperors and alchemists feel ashamed of their inferiority. In a short moment, Xiaoyan was surrounded by a crowd. Many of the younger alchemists fought to shake hands with Xiaoyan or ask some questions about alchemy. Of course, those questions were merely child's play in Xiaoyan's eyes. He gave a brief answer, but it caused those people of the younger generation to be stunned. This was because those questions were not raised by them. Instead, it was a problem that their teacher had been worrying about recently. They did not expect that when it came from Xiaoyan's mouth, it would be solved in a matter of seconds. This really caused them to be extremely surprised. A feeling of worship toward Xiaoyan immediately rose in their hearts. It was also because of this that Xiaoyan was surrounded by people who came to ask questions in a short moment. Although most of these people were from the younger generation of the Alchemist Association, there was no lack of elders with authority in the association. Although their appearance was rather surprising, it didn't affect the fiery atmosphere at the scene. Xiaoyan felt quite surprised in his heart at the association elders who had appeared around him. He did not expect that even they would participate in this fiery large army. In the face of their questions, Xiaoyan was not stingy at all, but at the same time, he also realized that these guys in front of him had endless questions. Xiaoyan suddenly felt helpless. If he continued to answer like this, he was afraid that even if he was given another 10 years, he would not be able to answer all of them. Xiaoyan smiled bitterly in his heart. Then he hurriedly said a few words. Then he instantly launched the sky extinction step under his feet. Wind and clouds surged, and Xiaoyan turned into a gust of wind and disappeared before everyone's eyes. When everyone saw Xiaoyan's departure, although they felt a little melancholy in their hearts, they didn't complain. After all, those questions should be solved by themselves. Blindly asking others for help was degrading themselves too much. Moreover, Xiaoyan himself also had important matters to attend to. He couldn't possibly waste time here with them. Therefore, after a series of helpless sighs, everyone scattered and left. After a while, Xiaoyan appeared in front of a living room. The door of the living room was wide open. Xiaoyan saw Gu Li and Qi Lin, who were discussing some matters from afar. Seeing Xiaoyan, the two looked at each other and smiled. But then they noticed the strange expression on Xiaoyan's face and couldn't help but frown slightly. When Xiaoyan came closer, he also noticed the expressions on their faces. He couldn't help but sigh and say, "Hee hee. The people of the guild are really enthusiastic. I almost didn't get to see the two of you again." Hearing this, the two laughed softly. They immediately understood the meaning of Xiaoyan's words. But then, Gu Li looked at Xiaoyan with a serious expression and said, "I heard that something happened at the auction. Even Muhan's guy went. Moreover, he represented MOD's side?" Xiaoyan nodded and said, "Yes. It was MOD's helper, a 9-star half-martial emperor. But fortunately, the matter has already been resolved. Nothing major happened." Gu Li and Qi Lin had a brief understanding of what happened at the auction, and no longer asked about it. However, Muhan's matter greatly shocked these two 9-star half-martial emperors. Muhan really wants to represent MOD's side? He is a big shot in the ancient city of Wilderness. How could he be in cahoots with someone like MOD? Qi Lin said with a frown. He clearly felt incomparably astonished. Indeed, men die for wealth, and birds die for food. However, with Muhan's experience, MOD shouldn't be able to take out anything that could move his heart, right? Gu Li and Qi Lin glanced at each other and continued to speak. Hearing the words of the two, Xiaoyan closed his eyes and shook his head with a smile. Then he looked at the two and said, "At first, I also thought that MOD had agreed to some condition. That was why Muhan acted. However, today old monster who told me the reason." Hearing Xiaoyan's words, Gu Li and Qi Lin immediately frowned. They looked at Xiaoyan with suspicious gazes. Old monster who? That guy was an 8-star half-martial emperor that MOD had spent a great price to invite. How could he possibly reveal information about MOD's side to Xiaoyan? Could it be that there was a trap? Xiaoyan frowned and shook his head. His eyes also revealed an uncertain expression. He hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth to speak. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Regardless of whether it is true or false, what he said to me today is completely reasonable. Regardless of whether it is Yanbing or Muhan, the reason why they acted against me was also because of this." In the following time, Xiaoyan roughly told Gu Li and Qi Lin about Feng Sun, Wang Qi and Wu Mahui, as well as the information that old monster who had told him in the alley. When the two old men heard this, they were extremely shocked. Only now did they know that during the period that Xiaoyan was in the ancient savage city, there were actually things that even they were unaware of that had happened. When the two of them heard that those people had been instigated or recruited by MOD, they couldn't help but be shocked by MOD's viciousness. This MOD was truly unscrupulous in order to achieve his goals. At this moment, the two of them really wished that they could tear MOD into 1,000 pieces and burn his bones to ashes. Why should we let such an alchemist scum stay in this world for long? Qi Lin's heart was filled with anger as he shouted sternly. Under his sleeves, his fists were tightly clenched together, causing his veins to bulge. Compared to Qi Lin, Gu Li was much more steady. He was more farsighted. At this moment, the first thing that came to his mind was the matter of the void lightning pool. Yan Xiao, once we enter the void lightning pool, we will have to face a 9-star half-martial emperor. Once Yanbing and that 7-star half-martial emperor break through, the overall strength of MOD's side will increase greatly. At that time, we won't even have the chance to retaliate. Xiaoyan nodded. This was also his biggest concern at this moment. Once Yanbing broke through, there was no need for the 7-star half-martial emperor to act. Just the 2 9-star half-martial emperors were enough to crush them. Then what should we do? Don't tell me that we can only give up this opportunity to enter the void lightning pool? If that's the case, we will have to wait another 100 years before we can enter the void lightning pool again. 100 years was neither long nor short. In the eyes of true experts, even 100 years or 1,000 years would pass by in the blink of an eye. However, to Gu Li and Qi Lin, it was impossible for them to treat it as nothing. No, we must enter the void lightning pool. However, at that time we can't just sit there and wait for death. We must strike first and gain the upper hand. While they have just entered and haven't broken through yet, we must take advantage of the fact that there is only one 9-star half-martial emperor. Let's go all out and deal with that 7-star half-martial emperor first. As for Yanbing, leave her to old freak Hu. Hearing Xiao Yan's words, Gu Li and Qi Lin couldn't help but feel astonished. Xiao Yan usually didn't look like much. They didn't expect him to be so decisive when he did things. Yes, that's right. In this way, MOD's side will have a total of 5 people. MOD won't be able to do anything. Old freak Hu will turn around and stall Yanbing. After dealing with that 7-star half-martial emperor, we will have eliminated 4 people in one go. Only Mu Han, a 9-star half-martial emperor, is left. Gu Li smiled and nodded. He continued to analyze what Xiao Yan had said. Hearing this, Qi Lin also couldn't help but nod. Indeed, the moment they entered the void lightning pool was the best opportunity for them. As for old freak Hu, although the two of them had their own opinions of him, since Xiao Yan had chosen to believe him, they could only reluctantly accept it. They believed that with Xiao Yan's eyesight, he would be able to determine whether this was true or false. In that case, leave the remaining Mu Han to us 2 brothers. Although we are no match for him, if we want to stall him, we should be able to. After all, even if he is a 9-star half-martial emperor, he still wouldn't be able to squash an 8-star half-martial emperor like mud. Hearing this, Xiao Yan nodded. Immediately after, he cupped his hands toward Gu Li and Qi Lin and said respectfully, "In that case, thank you seniors for your help." Faced with Xiao Yan's thanks, Gu Li and Qi Lin lightly smiled and waved their hands. Xiao Yan had saved their alchemist guild. Right now, he had merely helped them to stop a single person. Although that person was a 9-star half-martial emperor, it wasn't a big deal. Chapter 290. After a discussion with Gu Li and Qi Lin, the matter of the void lightning pool was temporarily settled. Now there was still half a month before the opening of the lightning pool, so Xiao Yan simply stayed in the alchemist guild. Wei Yi had died, and his residence had been completely changed by Gu Li. Xiao Yan was now the chief alchemist of the alchemist guild, so he naturally stayed there. In the following days, everyone knew that Xiao Yan was staying in the guild, and the number of people who came to ask questions suddenly increased. In a small room that was no more than 10 square meters, other than some furniture, there was also a bustling crowd. Outside the door, it was also crowded with people. Faced with this, Xiao Yan did not have any other solution other than being filled with helplessness. Gu Li and Qi Lin may have the intention to help him when they saw this, but there were really too many alchemists who had come to seek advice. It was not appropriate for them to intervene. When Wei Yi was in charge, he was greedy and only wanted to accumulate wealth. When he saw low-level alchemists, he had a disdainful look. If you didn't pay a certain price, he wouldn't care about you. And this also led to the fact that after Wei Yi died in the hands of Xiao Yan, the alchemists in the guild not only didn't have any complaints about Xiao Yan, but they also had a good impression of him. In addition to his current position, such a situation was reasonable. This kind of situation continued for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Xiao Yan was finally unable to endure the invisible bombardment from those alchemists. He hurriedly found Gu Li and told him that he would open a cauldron to refine pills in the Alchemist Association and allow those low-tier alchemists to observe. This method was unexpectedly useful to everyone. Although they didn't refine any more Emperor-grade medicinal pills, the 9th-grade medicinal pills still made the alchemists present extremely excited. Several kinds of 9th-grade pills that were usually extremely difficult to refine, now in the hands of Xiao Yan. All of his movements seemed to be very smooth. From refining the medicinal ingredients to condensing the embryonic pill, to finally forming the pill, This process in Xiao Yan's medicinal cauldron didn't have the slightest pause. Even the speed of refining the medicinal ingredients was more than twice as fast as an ordinary alchemist. This caused everyone to be shocked by his methods. He was indeed a rank 2 alchemist, a terrifying existence that surpassed ordinary 9th-grade alchemists. A 9th-grade pill was actually at his fingertips. The heavenly flame in the medicinal cauldron on the stage was churning, and the crowd below the stage was constantly exclaiming. A 9th-grade pill quickly formed in Xiao Yan's hands, and Xiao Yan's position in everyone's hearts also rapidly rose. In just a few days, Xiao Yan's image in everyone's heart was almost the same as the previous chief alchemists in the past. In fact, he was even better than the current president Gu Li and Qi Lin. Haha, you have been living in the association these few days, and you have taken all the limelight from us 2 old fellows. Now in the association, I can hear those little brats talking about how exquisite your alchemy skills are all day long, making us 2 old fellows seem so unbearable, ha 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 ha. In the hall, Gu Li sat beside Xiao Yan, looked at Xiao Yan with a smile on his face, and said jokingly. When the latter heard this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. He shook his head and sighed softly, then opened his mouth and said, "If I can let you 2 old fellows have a taste of being confused by the problem, I would rather the 2 of you be in the limelight. Ha 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 ha, forget it. Both of us are old fellows, and we can't withstand the torment like you young fellows." Qi Lin by the side laughed out loud and said. Xiao Yan couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. This was also Wei Yi's sin, but now he had to bear it. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan couldn't help but feel melancholy in his heart. Night. Invisible time passed in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, there was only 1 night left before the opening of the void lightning pool. At this time, Xiao Yan also put down all the other trivial matters. Now he was sitting cross-legged on the bed in the room with his eyes closed at this moment. In the entire room in front of Xiao Yan, whether it was on the table or the floor, as long as it could be placed, there were countless jade bottles densely packed. On the bed, Xiao Yan spread out his palms and waved casually. Strange fire spurted out. After Xiao Yan's soul power control, in a short moment, hundreds of palm-sized beautiful fire lotuses appeared in front of Xiao Yan's eyes. Hundreds of fire lotuses floated in the air like a work of art. The beautiful fire light illuminated the entire room, as if it was daytime. Xiao Yan flicked his finger, and the hundreds of fire lotuses immediately shot into the jade bottles below as if they had received an order. During these 2 hours, Xiao Yan repeated this set of actions over 10 times. Those jade bottles that filled the entire room each contained a fire lotus. After doing all this, Xiao Yan finally exhaled gently. With Xiao Yan's current strength, the strength that erupted from the fire lotuses within these fire lotuses was likely not inferior to an ordinary D-class Do technique. This time around, there were over 5,000 fire lotus bottles that he had formed. 5,000 fire lotus bottles. This was equivalent to 5,000 D-class Do techniques. If they were to explode together, that kind of strength was something that even a Bandi would not be able to endure. Xiao Yan would treat all of this as a surprise for MOD when the time came. The next day. Today was the day that the void lightning pool was about to open. Hence, the savage ancient city today was even more lively than usual. When Xiao Yan walked out of the room, he lifted his head and looked at the sky. There were many flowing lights flying across the sky. Those were all Bandi class experts. Even until today, those Bandi class experts who did not obtain the void lightning pool invitation had not given up. It was also because today was the day that the void lightning pool would open that those who possessed the lightning invitation would definitely take it out. Hence, they were waiting for the lightning invitation to take the bait. Gu Li and Qi Lin were already waiting when he walked to the main hall. The 3 of them smiled at each other when they saw each other. Without wasting any more time, the 3 of them walked out of the hall side by side. With a move of their feet, they rushed into the sky. Haha, although those who possess the lightning invitation will gather in my savage ancient city, the actual location where the void lightning pool opens is not in my savage ancient city. Instead, it is located 3,000 miles outside of the savage ancient city, on Gulay Mountain. As the 3 of them flew, Gu Li explained the location of the void lightning pool to Xiao Yan with a faint smile on his face. Gulay Mountain is a mountain that reaches the sky. It is covered by thunderclouds all year round. The entire mountain contains a large amount of mysterious gold. Mysterious gold has a special attraction effect towards lightning. Hence, it is the best place for lightning-attributed cultivators. It is also because of these reasons that the void lightning pool opens there. Xiaoyan secretly nodded as he listened to Gu Li's explanation. He now had some understanding of the so-called Gulei Mountain. After the three of them left the savage ancient city and flew to the west for around 1,500 kilometers, there was indeed a lightning mountain that reached the sky at the edge of Xiaoyan's sight. It was called a lightning mountain because it was surrounded by thick thunderclouds from the waist of the mountain. Despite being a great distance away, Xiaoyan was still able to sense waves of invisible pressure being emitted from the lightning mountain. The lightning here is indeed different from other places. Xiaoyan used his spiritual strength to carefully investigate the unusual aura between heaven and earth. He could not help but exclaim in surprise. At this moment, even Xiao Jin, who had been sleeping in Xiaoyan's body, could not help but wake up from its slumber. It rejoiced in Xiaoyan's body. With a thought, Xiaoyan calmed it down. Kuku, the mountain range where the Gray Mountain Range is located, is called the Gray Mountain Range. It is rumored that back then, there was a lightning affinity elite Dodi who broke through here. When he broke through, lightning descended and the color of the sky within a 5,000-kilometer radius changed. That kind of might was really impressive. Qi Lin's eyes looked at the vast mountain range in front of him. Although he had been here more than 10 times, every time he saw this mountain range, his heart could not help but be filled with pride. With regards to this, Gu Li was also helpless. He exchanged glances with Xiaoyan. The two of them shook their heads and laughed softly. Without saying anything more, their bodies moved and flew towards the Gulei Mountain at the end of their line of sight. Chapter 291. This distance seemed to be extremely far, but in front of the strength of Xiaoyan's group, it only took a short moment to traverse it. After a short moment, Xiaoyan's group had already arrived before Gray Mountain. It was only at this moment that Xiaoyan felt even more shocked by Gray Mountain. Gray Mountain was absolutely the most magnificent mountain he'd ever seen in his entire life. The mountain, with a diameter of tens of thousands of meters, was like a creeping ancient giant beast. The towering peak pierced through the clouds and pointed towards the sky. The entire mountain was covered by thunderclouds like a coiling black dragon. Waves of thunderous roars were like dragon roars that shook the heavens and the earth. In the sky above the towering peak, endless thunderclouds enveloped the entire mountain range. Whistling cold winds raged high up in the sky, and anyone who came into contact with them would feel cold all over, as if they were in a 10,000-year-old ice palace. In addition to that, there were endless silver lightning bolts descending from the sky like horned dragons. Even though everyone present was a half-martial emperor, they still couldn't help but feel fear when facing the terrifying might of the thunderbolts. Of course, there was no lack of half-martial emperors present who were lightning attribute experts. When the thunderbolts descended, they didn't dodge and allowed the thunderbolts to strike their bodies. However, the result was different from what everyone had imagined. The instant the thunderbolts came into contact with the half-martial emperor's body, they seemed to be affected by some sort of terrifying suction force and instantly disappeared. Looking at the half-martial emperor's aura again, even though there seemed to be no change at first glance, if one looked carefully, there was a flash of lightning in the depths of the half-martial emperor's eyes. TSK, this Gray Mountain is truly incomparably magnificent. With such tyrannical thunderbolts in the heavens and the earth, it's no wonder that it's a holy land in the hearts of lightning attribute cultivators. Xiaoyan looked around and gazed at the increasing number of half-martial emperors in the surroundings. A portion of them were lightning attribute experts. Obviously, they'd also come because of its reputation. Xiaoyan lifted his gaze and looked at the majestic mountain peak in front of him. The shock in his heart became increasingly dense. When his gaze swept from the bottom to the middle of the mountain, 3 overbearing words that contained a frightening pressure were slowly reflected in Xiaoyan's eyes. Mount Gray. The 3 large words, written with bold strokes, were agglomerated by someone's pressure and forcefully carved onto it. Therefore, when Xiaoyan first saw the 3 large words Gulei Mountain, his mind was shaken by the frightening pressure contained on it. Fortunately, Gu Li and Xiaoyan were by Xiaoyan's side. Gu Li hurriedly pulled Xiao Yan awake. Xiao Yan, who had regained his senses, appeared somewhat pale. He glanced at the majestic mountain peak in front of him with lingering fear, but did not dare to face the 3 large words that contained a terrifying pressure. Gu Li at the side shook his head lightly. His eyes quickly glanced at the 3 big words. His heart was also incomparably heavy. Then he cautiously said to Xiao Yan, "Little fellow, you are really reckless." Those 3 words were left behind by the elite Dodi back then after he broke through. The pressure contained within them has not been extinguished for a long time. Forget about you and me. Even if Mu Han were to come, he would not dare to easily look at them. Xiao Yan smiled awkwardly and nodded. He pulled his head back, and did not dare to say anything more. On the other hand, Qi Lin by the side could not resist laughing out loud after hearing the words from Gu Li's mouth. He said to Xiao Yan, "Xiao Yan, don't listen to his nonsense. Yan Xiao, you should not listen to his frightening words. Those 3 words may have been left behind by that elite Dodi. But who says that one cannot look him in the eye? As long as your spiritual strength is strong enough, you will similarly be able to treat this Dodi pressure as nothing. Qi, do you think that with our spiritual strength, we will be able to resist the Dodi's pressure?" Gu Li curled his lips and rolled his eyes at Qi Lin as he asked. We do not have that ability. However, you have underestimated Mu Han." Qi Lin parted his mouth and smiled. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Gu Li. He smiled and said, "Back then, when he had just broken through to the 9-star Bandi, his spiritual strength had coincidentally stepped into the unity stage. At that time, he had sat on a mountain not far from the Gray Mountain for over half a day. The reason was that he had stared at the 3 large words Gray Mountain for half a day." Qi Lin's face carried an amazed expression as he spoke. Even though they were currently enemies with Mu Han, this did not affect his admiration for Mu Han. Xiao Yan could not help but feel amazed in his heart after hearing this. Although Mu Han was arrogant and did things ruthlessly, it must be said that he did have his own capital. Although he has not come here for many years, his strength has now advanced. His spiritual strength is also much stronger than back then. How long do you think he will be able to endure if he were to try again? Gu Li was finally speechless when he spoke until this point. He was indeed unable to say anything in the face of these words. What he had said earlier was under the premise that they would not use any strength to face the pressure of the Dodi. However, when he thought about it, how could this be possible? Haha, the few of you have come quite early. There is still some time before the lightning pool opens. Just as the few of them were discussing the pressure of the Dodi, a familiar old voice was transmitted from behind the 3 of them. The 3 of them turned around at the same time. When they saw the person who had arrived, Gu Li and Qi Lin smiled slightly. Xiao Yan's face revealed a surprised expression. "Elder Xian, I thought you would not enter the lightning pool. Why have you?" Xiao Yan frowned and asked in doubt. The person who had arrived was Elder Xian from the Union Pavilion. "Haha, the old me is not interested in this lightning pool. It is just that young friend Yan Xiao is about to enter the lightning pool today. The old me has come to take a look on behalf of my pavilion chief." When the pavilion chief of the Union Pavilion was mentioned, the expressions of the surrounding half-emperors involuntarily changed. The high-class half-emperors who were closer to the few of them also moved back in an undetectable manner. Xiao Yan did not have the heart to bother about this. He continued to chat and laugh with Elder Xian, who was walking towards him. "Elder Xian." Xiao Yan cupped his hands together and greeted Elder Xian with a respectful smile. Elder Xian casually waved his hand. His deep eyes scanned the surroundings, appearing to be searching for something. After a long while, he returned his gaze to Xiao Yan and said, "The pavilion chief thought that Mu Han and the others might be a little restless. Therefore, he asked the old me to come over and take a look. It is also good to help young friend Yan Xiao get rid of some unnecessary trouble. However, from the looks of it, those fellows should not be here yet." Xiao Yan smiled. How could he not know Luo Jin's intentions? He immediately smiled again and cupped his hands together. "Then, Elder Xian, please thank the pavilion chief on my behalf." The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled knowingly. When Gu Li and Qi Lin saw the 2 of them singing the same tune, Gu Li opened his mouth to speak. However, his expression suddenly changed at that instant. The expressions of Xiao Yan's 3-man group, And some of the surrounding Band-D experts also changed. They turned their bodies and looked at the distant gray mountain range behind them. There, a group of people was flying towards them. The aura of the person leading the group was extremely terrifying. No one present could compare to him. The few people who had arrived late were MOD and his group. Chapter 292. Mu-Han's appearance immediately alarmed everyone in the Gray Mountain Range. High up in the sky, nearly 100 half-martial emperors had solemn expressions as they watched MOD's group gradually approach. Their gazes that were filled with solemnity landed on Mu-Han, who was leading the group. It is unexpected that the news that was spread not long ago is actually true. Mu-Han is actually going to enter the lightning pool despite being a 9-star Band-D. Could it be that he is about to break through the 9-star barrier and advance to the Do-D class? Everyone's gazes gathered on Mu-Han. Various discussions were quietly emitted and continued to resound across the sky. Che, what advancement to the Do-D class? It is extremely difficult for one to break through after reaching the strength of a 9-star Band-D. It is impossible to rely on external strength. If one wishes to break through, one must rely on one's own cultivation. Even if his current strength is that of an advanced 9-star Band-D, isn't it wishful thinking if he wants to rely on the lightning pool to break through? That's right. The gap between a 9-star Band-D and a Do-D is itself a chasm. How can it be so easy to cross it? Moreover, it is rumored that the D-tribulation will descend when one breaks through to the Do-D class. If one is unable to endure it, one will end up being turned into ashes. This kind of price is something that even Mu-Han would not dare to easily endure. Hey, it is rumored that he has come for Yen Xiao this time around. Have you seen MOD and the others behind him? This is the proof. Moreover, didn't Yen Xiao refine a full-grade detribulation pill earlier? Hey, that is a necessity for a Band-D to break through to the Do-D class. He might have been attracted by this. All the Band-D experts present finally nodded their heads in agreement after hearing the most convincing explanation. After all, this was the only explanation that fit the guesses in their hearts. Xiao Yan's face remained calm after hearing the words emitted from the mouths of the people around him. Only when the full-grade detribulation pill was mentioned did a ripple appear on Xiao Yan's calm face. If it wasn't for these half-martial emperors mentioning it, he might really have forgotten that the Emperor Tribulation pellet was prepared for 9-star half-martial emperors. If that was the case, the reason why Mu-Han attacked Lindong was not only because Lindong had killed Wu Mahui, but also because the Emperor Tribulation pill was one of his targets. As he thought of this, the corners of Xiao Yan's mouth involuntarily curled into a cold smile. A bright light flashed in the depths of his eyes. When Mu-Han's group arrived in front of Gray Mountain, their sharp gazes swept past Xiao Yan's group. When they saw Elder Xian standing beside Xiao Yan, they couldn't help but frown. Who would have thought that the Union Pavilion's Elder Xian would actually appear here? After the previous incident, Mu-Han was clearly much more cautious when doing things. As for Elder Xian, Mu-Han did not pay too much attention to him. In the past, Elder Xian had never entered the Void Lightning Pool. Mu-Han believed that this time would be no exception. The few of them swept past Xiao Yan's group and finally landed on a mountain peak that was relatively close to Gray Mountain. The mountain peak was a flat ground that looked as if it had been cut by a blade. The few of them slowly descended and randomly found a place to sit down with their eyes closed. Xiao Yan's group slowly swept their gazes across Mu-Han's group. When Xiao Yan saw Old Devil who was sitting at the edge of the group, his eyes couldn't help but flicker slightly. Just from the position of the group, Old Devil who was indeed the most isolated one among them. Xiao Yan chuckled as he thought to himself. Soon after, he stopped paying attention to Old Devil who. However, when his gaze landed on Mu-Han, who was at the front of the group, he couldn't help but frown slightly. He was slightly surprised in his heart. At the same time, Gu Li and the other two beside Xiao Yan, as well as some other Band-D experts, also fixed their gazes on Mu-Han's body. At this moment, Mu-Han's eyes were focused in front of him. His vast spiritual strength had agglomerated into an invisible tornado that surrounded Mu-Han's body. A wild wind whistled. In front of Mu-Han, he was facing the three large words Gray Mountain that were agglomerated from the pressure of an elite Do-D. At this moment, Mu-Han's eyes were staring intently at the three large words. The invisible terrifying pressure had agglomerated into a majestic human figure. The human figure had his hands behind his back and was looking down at Mu-Han, who was sitting cross-legged at his feet. The terrifying aura was just like Mount Tai pressing down. Although Mu-Han's spiritual strength had already stepped into the unification stage, it was still extremely strenuous for him when faced with the pressure of an elite Do-Di. Xiao Yan's group used their spiritual strength to investigate the scene in front of them. Everyone's hearts were extremely shocked. Although Mu-Han appeared to be strenuous, he was still able to sit steadily in front of this Do-Di's pressure with a calm expression. Just this point alone was something that no one present, other than Guyu, who was in Xiao Yan's body, could achieve. This was also sufficient to demonstrate Mu-Han's strength. Bang! A couple of human figures were surrounding an injured old man in the sky. Their eyes revealed a rich, greedy expression. Although there was some blood on the corner of the old man's mouth, and some bruises were left on his face, he did not appear to have suffered much damage from his aura. However, from the looks of the current situation, he was unable to advance or retreat. Among the few people surrounding Qin Zhong, there was a skinny old man who was holding a dagger in each hand. He was looking at Qin Zhong with a sinister smile. His scarlet tongue was gently licking the blood on the dagger. This scene caused him to involuntarily feel an additional bloodthirsty feeling. The skinny old man carefully tasted the blood on the tip of his tongue. He coldly laughed at Qin Zhong. Humph humph, Qin Zhong, we do not intend to make things difficult for you. However, you should also be aware that there are less than 30 people who can enter the lightning pool in the empty realm. Which one of them is not someone with great strength? Other than Yan Xiao, which one of them is not a high-class bandit? What right do you have to enter? As his voice fell, another tall old man who was as sturdy as a tiger also coldly laughed and said, "Haha, Blood Snake is right. We also know that you have a good relationship with Yan Xiao. With his protection, you will naturally be able to enter the lightning pool in the empty realm. However, don't forget that he can't even protect himself right now. This time, Master Mu has personally come. A mere 3-star bandit, no matter how many tricks he has up his sleeve, will not be able to escape death in front of a 9-star bandit. Hehehehe. Don't even think that Yan Xiao will be able to protect you. Instead of waiting for us to take action, I advise you to hand over the lightning invitation to us as soon as possible. We can still let you escape unscathed. Otherwise, don't blame us for being ruthless." Qin Zhong's expression was grave as the stern cry was emitted. He was also aware of the matter between Mu-Han and Xiao Yan. He was aware of just how powerful the enemy that Xiao Yan was about to face was. However, it was also because of this that he wanted to enter the lightning pool in hopes of lending Xiao Yan a hand. As if he had seen through Qin Zhong's thoughts, the skinny old man once again coldly laughed and ridiculed. "If you wish to enter the lightning pool to help Yan Xiao, I advise you not to think too much about it. Their opponents are all high-level half-martial emperors. Even if you were to enter, you would at most be an additional burden to him. You will only increase the pressure on him out of nowhere. Therefore, I advise you to obediently hand over the lightning invitation. When the time comes, we might even take pity on him and save his worthless life." Ha 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 ha. As these words were spoken, the surrounding bandit experts immediately laughed out loud. Their gazes were filled with disdain as they looked at Qin Zhong. Don't go too far. Even if he is no match for Mu-Han, he is not someone that you few 5-star bandit can insult. If he were to appear here now, how would you dare to shamelessly insult him in front of him? Qin Zhong's heart was immediately enraged when he heard the ridicule of the skinny old man and the others. Doqi violently surged as he clenched his fists tightly under his sleeves. His face also turned red and his veins were exposed, twisting and wriggling continuously. Xiao Yan had helped him a couple of times, and he had long since regarded Xiao Yan as his savior in his heart. Even the clan had erected a statue of Xiao Yan for the clan members to worship. Now that he heard these bastards in front of him actually insult Xiao Yan in such a manner, his heart was naturally unable to endure it. However, the skinny old man and the sturdy old man, as well as the other 3 bandit experts, all laughed disdainfully in response to Qin Zhong's fury. The skinny old man looked at Qin Zhong with disdain and ridiculed. "Why? Are you angry? We are insulting Yan Xiao, yet you are so angry. It seems that Yan Xiao is very important to you. Why? Have you taken him as your godfather? Ha 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 ha. Then I will continue to insult you, godfather. He is merely a person who is about to die. What is the big deal? Haha, indeed. It is merely the words of a person who is about to die. It is not a big deal. If you are not used to hearing it, just kill him. Don't you think so? Just as the skinny old man's words left his mouth, before he had the time to catch his breath, an extremely icy voice, which seemed to have originated from hell, sounded faintly beside his ear. In the next instant, the pupils of the skinny old man suddenly shrunk, following which everything in front of him turned black. As his pupils shrunk, he had already lost all signs of life. Chapter 293. Xiao Yan's face was indifferent as he slowly released his hand in the empty sky. The skinny old man, whose life force had already disappeared, had lost all control of his body. Following the gravitational force, he was just like a meteor as he violently fell. The skinny old man had died. Only at this moment did the surrounding people recover with panicked expressions. However, when they focused their eyes, they realized that there was a human figure standing behind each of them. Xian. Elder Xian. Guli. Qilin. The few of them exclaimed in unison. There was no need to describe the horror within their words. A great storm had been set off in their hearts. They could not understand how Xiao Yan's group knew that they had attacked Qinzhong at the outermost area of the Grey Mountain Range. Although the spiritual perception of the few people present was extremely frightening, Xiao Yan's attention was currently focused on Mu Han and the others. Additionally, there was the existence of the Dodi's pressure in the Grey Mountain Range. How could they have the leisure to spread their spiritual strength and investigate the big battle around them? If one were to say that someone had informed them, the few people present would not believe it. One of the biggest reasons why they dared to touch Qinzhong in this place was that no one had passed by this place. Since no one had seen it, Xiao Yan did not investigate. How did he know about it? Old Gu, thank you very much. Xiao Yan could not be bothered with the shocked expressions of the few 5-star band emperors in front of him. All he did was softly thank Gu Yu in his heart. Haha, there is no need to thank the old me. I was merely bored for a moment. Moreover, I saw that this little fellow is not bad. Hence, I wanted to save him. I merely asked you to act on my behalf. Haha. Gu Yu laughed and agreed to Xiao Yan's thanks. Xiao Yan laughed softly. This was indeed true. Compared to him, Gu Yu, who was in his body, was much more relaxed. However, it was also because of this that he was able to save Qinzhong's life. Xiao Yan laughed softly in his heart. After which he did not say anything else. He lifted his eyes. The gentleness from a moment ago was no longer present in his eyes. Xiao Yan's bone-chilling gaze slowly swept across the remaining 4 people. When the 4 half-emperors met Xiao Yan's gaze, their bodies involuntarily shivered. Although Xiao Yan's strength appeared to be only that of a peak 3-star half-martial emperor, everyone knew that his actual strength was not only that. The 4 of them trembled as they turned their gazes with great difficulty. They looked at Gu Li and the others behind them. Immediately, they looked at each other and felt a chill in their hearts. They had no chance of winning against the few people behind them. Once Gu Li and the others attacked, they would end up like Xuexi. The eyes of the 4 involuntarily fell on Qinzhong. He was the weakest person present. As long as they could control him, they believed that Xiao Yan and the others would be forced to stop. Swish. Among the 4 of them, the only 5-star half-martial emperor that was not confronting anyone suddenly moved. Like a bolt of lightning, he instantly grabbed at Qinzhong. At the same time, the other 3 quickly turned around. They wanted to delay the people behind them. The encouraging monk slightly frowned. He immediately released his aura of an 8-star half-martial emperor. His terrifying aura was like Mount Tai pressing down on the 3 of them. At this moment, the remaining half-martial emperor had already arrived before Qinzhong. An extremely cruel smile appeared on the corner of the old man's mouth. His eagle claw-like hand ferociously grabbed at Qinzhong's neck. Qinzhong's expression abruptly changed. The speed of the old man before him greatly surpassed his own. Although he wanted to dodge, the difference in strength between the 2 of them was too enormous. Qinzhong was already firmly locked onto by the old man. It was simply impossible for him to dodge. Damn it. Truly despicable. seeing that the eagle claw-like hand was about to descend upon him. Qin Zhong prepared to fight with his life on the line. However, right at this moment, the sound of wind whistling resounded in this world. A chilly wind blew past, causing the old man's neck to suddenly feel cold. Before he could react, an ice-cold voice that did not contain the slightest bit of emotion faintly sounded in his ears. "You dare to play with speed before me? Are you even qualified?" Right after those words left his mouth, a heavenly flame gushed out from Xiao Yan's palm. The body of the old man beneath his palm rapidly became like a piece of burning charcoal. After that, it turned into specks of ash and completely disappeared from this world. When the other three saw this move of Xiao Yan's, they immediately felt incomparably terrified. They never imagined that Xiao Yan's methods were actually this terrifying. Elder Xian looked at the red-faced and frightened old man before him. The corners of his mouth rose into a pitiful smile. He said with a smile, "Rejoice! Rejoice! Rejoice that you all did not encounter him, and instead encountered us. Even we find it difficult to imagine how terrifying he is." Right after Elder Xian said those words, the auras of the 3 8-star half-martial emperors suddenly trembled. Frightening power immediately poured out. The figure before them also fell down. "Old brother Qin, are you all right?" Qin Zhong had a bitter smile on his face as he shook his head. He frowned as he looked at Xiao Yan. With a worried expression, he bitterly sighed and said, "I'm fine. However, Yan Xiao, you're going to face a 9-star half-martial emperor this time around." Xiao Yan smiled. He lightly patted Qin Zhong's shoulder and said with an indifferent expression, "Old brother Qin, don't worry. Nothing will happen. Although Muhan is a 9-star half-martial emperor, and I am indeed no match for him, I am still quite confident in my ability to escape." Hearing what Xiao Yan said, Qin Zhong involuntarily recalled Xiao Yan's frightening speed. From the moment of imminent peril earlier, Xiao Yan's speed was likely even more frightening than before. Sigh. Although Qin Zhong was slightly relieved in his heart, he still sighed helplessly and said, "What a pity. It's a pity that this old man's strength is insufficient. After cultivating for so many years, I am still only a 3-star half-martial emperor. I am unable to help you like these people. In this battle Qin Zhong wanted to express his good intentions. However, in the end, he shook his head helplessly. Unfortunately, his strength was limited. Although he wanted to help, he was powerless. It was like what that crimson snake had said earlier. With his current strength, even if he were to go, he would only be an additional burden. Seeing the helpless expression on Qin Zhong's face, Xiao Yan lightly smiled. He took a glance at Elder Xian and the other two who had arrived before him. Then Xiao Yan turned to Qin Zhong and said with a smile, "Old brother Qin, don't say this. Old brother Qin, there is no need for you to act like this. If you truly wish to help me, I can only wish that you will be able to break through to 4-star half-martial emperor in this trip to the lightning pool. At that time, I have another matter that I wish to ask old brother Qin for." Haha. Qin Zhong slightly raised his eyebrows. He could not help but feel a trace of suspicion in his heart. However, when he saw Xiao Yan's confident expression, Qin Zhong's face immediately revealed a smile. He heavily nodded and said, "Old brother Xiao Yan, don't worry. I, Qin Zhong, have prepared for this day for a long time. As long as I am able to enter the lightning pool, this old man will definitely be able to break through to a 4-star half-martial emperor." Haha, then I wish old brother Qin success. Xiao Yan, Gu Li and the other two cupped their hands and smiled at Qin Zhong. After which, the few of them did not linger any longer. Their bodies moved, and they once again flew towards Grey Mountain. When the few of them returned to Grey Mountain, a large number of half-martial emperors had already gathered there. At this moment, there were already a dozen or so battles going on in the vicinity of Grey Mountain. Those people were still fighting over the lightning posts. As the time for the opening of the lightning pool in the void approached, the battles on the battlefield became even more intense. The sounds of dough skills exploding in the sky were like waves of thunder, causing the cultivators at the foot of Grey Mountain to involuntarily feel alarmed. When the crowd saw that Xiao Yan and the others, who had left earlier, had returned with Qin Zhong, who was covered in injuries, they immediately understood the reason why Xiao Yan had left. They could not help but sigh in admiration for Xiao Yan's righteousness. At the same time, they also felt a trace of envy for Qin Zhong. Xiao Yan's gaze was focused on the increasing number of half-martial emperors in the surroundings. At the same time, he also saw that Mu Han and the others had already stood up. They were quietly standing where they were, waiting for the opening of the lightning pool in the void. Xiao Yan's gaze was fixed on Mu Han. At this moment, the latter's complexion was somewhat pale. However, it appeared that he was not seriously injured. This caused Xiao Yan to feel a trace of pity. He had hoped that something would happen to this 9-star half-martial emperor. Noticing Xiao Yan's gaze, Mu Han also turned his head around. His face was filled with disdain as he revealed a cold smile. After which, he turned his head back and no longer paid any attention to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan smiled indifferently. He raised his head and looked at the black thunderclouds in the sky above the mountain peak that were becoming denser. Rumble. At a certain moment, a rumbling sound that everyone had been waiting for was finally emitted from the churning thunderclouds. Immediately, the churning thunderclouds in the sky above the mountain peak became even more intense. A long while later, under everyone's gazes, a crack that seemed to be dispelling the clouds and revealing the sun slowly spread open within the thunderclouds. Lightning pool in the void open. Chapter 294. Rumble. The vast thunderclouds continued to churn as waves of rumbling sounds resounded across the sky. The half-emperors around Grey Mountain all turned their gazes over at this moment. Their faces were filled with excitement as they stared at the churning thunderclouds. The battles in the distance gradually stopped at this moment. With the opening of the lightning pool, there was no need for them to continue fighting over it. This was also an unwritten rule. As long as one could keep the lightning invitation in one's hand, no one could snatch it when the lightning pool opened. The silver crack was particularly eye-catching in the thunderclouds. It was like a silver lightning floating in the thunderclouds. As the thunderclouds continued to churn, the crack gradually expanded. As the crack expanded, Xiao Yan could not help but frown at a certain moment. He extended his hand from under his sleeve and gently rubbed 2 fingers. A bright silver lightning invitation appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. It was his void lightning pool invitation. At this moment, the void lightning pool invitation was emitting a faint silver light. As the light flowed, the lightning invitation was actually somewhat uncontrollable. It was as if it had come alive and actually took the initiative to fly towards the crack in the sky. If Xiao Yan had not caught it in time, it was likely that it would have flown away. This is hiss. This thing is actually able to resonate with the crack. Frowning slightly as he looked at the lightning invitation in his hand, Xiao Yan could not help but exclaim in surprise. Haha, of course. The Void Lightning Pool invitation originally belonged to the Void Lightning Pool. The only difference is that this thing is formed from the impurities discarded by the Void Lightning Pool. Now that the energy in the Void Lightning Pool is at its most abundant, the Void Lightning Pool can use a special method to guide the Void Lightning Pool in. We are just its passengers. Gu Li opened his mouth and explained to Xiao Yan when he heard the surprised words from Xiao Yan's mouth. Xiao Yan nodded to indicate that he understood. He held the lightning invitation in his hand. Xiao Yan raised his head to look at the gradually expanding crack in the sky. He frowned again and asked Gu Li softly, "President Gu Li, when will we be able to enter the lightning pool?" As soon as he said this, the 4 people beside Xiao Yan all laughed. Gu Li stroked his beard and teased Xiao Yan. "I didn't expect you to be so anxious in front of the Void Lightning Pool." Haha. Xiao Yan smiled awkwardly and scratched his head. Honestly speaking, although MOD and the rest were beside him, his heart was filled with hope for a breakthrough. Now that he saw that the lightning pool had finally opened, he could not help but feel a little excited. Haha, don't worry. There's no need to rush. The lightning pool tunnel has only just begun. It will take about 4 hours for it to fully open. In these 4 hours, you should just stay here obediently. The moment these words were spoken, Xiao Yan felt helpless. Who would have thought that entering the lightning pool would be so troublesome? However, 4 hours was merely a blink of an eye for these half-martial emperors. In the blink of an eye, the Void Lightning Pool had completely opened. The 30 half-martial emperors who held the lightning invitation could also prepare to enter the lightning pool. Rumble. Amidst the thunder clouds, there was a strange circular tunnel with a diameter of several hundred feet. In the middle of the black thunder clouds, it released an extremely oppressive and terrifying aura. Within the tunnel, one could see terrifying lightning bolts that were at least 100 feet thick. They were wreaking havoc within the tunnel. The continuous lightning bolts completely sealed the entrance of the tunnel. Under such power, even a half-martial emperor would not be able to forcefully enter. At this moment, even Xiao Yan, who was below, had a solemn expression as he stared at the terrifying lightning bolts. He felt ashamed in his heart. No wonder no one dares to forcefully enter without a lightning invitation. I see. With the protection of the lightning bolts, even a half-martial emperor would not be able to forcefully enter. Xiao Yan cautiously observed the lightning bolts. The more he stared at them, the more shocked he felt in his heart. As expected of someone born from the heavens and earth. With such an astonishing aura, even half-martial emperors were like clay before him. Haha, the power of the void lightning pool is indeed terrifying. After all, it is the son of the void lightning pool. How could it not have some strength? Fortunately, this thing has yet to evolve and gain intelligence. Otherwise, we would not have the opportunity to enter it to cultivate. Qilin softly said with a smile when he saw Xiao Yan's solemn expression. When Xiao Yan heard Qilin's anthropomorphic analogy, he instantly understood the meaning behind his words. The void lightning pool was eternal and unchanging. The power it possessed was naturally incomparable. If the void lightning pool was compared to an extraordinary force, then the power formed by the void lightning pool was like its sun. The reason why the void lightning pool was so terrifying was mostly because of the void lightning pool that stood behind it. In this aspect, it was similar to the forces on the continent. Swoosh! Just as Xiao Yan and the others were talking, a few sharp sounds of wind breaking suddenly resounded in the void lightning pool. The few of them turned their heads to look. Not far away, a few half-martial emperors waved their sleeves. The lightning invitation in their hands immediately turned into 9 stars and shot out. In the blink of an eye, it entered the void lightning pool. At this moment, the remaining pseudo-emperor waved his hand in the air. Light flashed, and a lightning invitation appeared in the pseudo-emperor's hand. Without hesitation, when the lightning invitation appeared in his hand, his thumb quickly brushed across the tip of his middle finger. Then, a drop of blood flowed out from the tip of his middle finger. With a swipe of his middle finger, the drop of blood was smeared on the lightning invitation. After doing this, the half-martial emperor waved his sleeve, and the lightning invitation in his hand shot out. Just like the other lightning invitation, it entered the void lightning pool. Xiao Yan frowned as he looked at this. He couldn't help but feel curious. Seeing this, Guli immediately smiled and explained to Xiao Yan, "The void lightning pool is special. Once you enter the void lightning pool, you will naturally not be ostracized. However, if we try to enter, we will be attacked by those lightning bolts. So we need to attach our auras to the lightning invitation so that those lightning bolts will misidentify us. Only in this way will we be able to enter safely. Otherwise, you've also felt it earlier. The terror of those lightning bolts is not something we can easily imagine." Xiao Yan lightly nodded when he heard this. Those lightning bolts were indeed terrifying. At the very least, with his current strength, he didn't have the slightest confidence in facing those lightning bolts. After Guli finished speaking, Qilin immediately said solemnly, "That's right. Back then, there was a guy who didn't listen to our advice and wanted to force his way in. In the end, after he was struck by those lightning bolts, he was instantly turned into a charred corpse. When that guy was alive, he was a 7-star half-martial emperor." Hiss. When these words were spoken, not only Xiao Yan, but even some of the half-martial emperors who had never heard of this rumor could not help but suck in a breath of cold air when they heard this. It was hard to imagine that those lightning bolts would actually be so terrifying. Some of the half-martial emperors who originally had other thoughts also stealthily retreated with cold sweat all over their bodies. Since Qilin had already spoken, there was naturally no need for them to stay any longer. "Go!" Suddenly a low shout sounded. Xiao Yan looked over and saw that it was Mod and the rest. Muhan was currently shooting the lightning invitation into the void lightning pool. Mod and the rest were following closely behind him. Muhan's eyes were icy cold as they were thrown to Xiao Yan after the lightning invitation entered the lightning pool tunnel. The two stared at each other for a long while before Muhan let out a cold snort. He turned his head and his feet suddenly stomped on the mountain under his feet. The mountain trembled as MOD's group of 5 rushed into the air and flew toward the lightning pool tunnel. When he saw the few of them flying towards the void lightning pool, Xiao Yan's eyes slowly narrowed. He stared at Muhan, who was leading the group, and softly said, "Have they entered the void lightning pool? Have they started to enter the lightning pool? Since that's the case, it's time for us to move." After his voice sounded, Xiao Yan's hand, which was holding the lightning invitation, suddenly clenched tightly. Due to the strength in his hand, his slightly sharp nails dug into his flesh. Fresh blood flowed out and dyed the entire lightning invitation. "Let's go. It is time for us to enter. There is still a tough battle waiting for us." Xiao Yan suddenly waved his hand. Fresh blood wrapped around the lightning invitation, and it turned into a blood-colored flowing light that swiftly shot into the void lightning pool. Beside him, Gu Li and Qin Zhong nodded their heads in unison. Elder Xian smiled faintly, and also prepared to return. In the next instant, the 4 of them simultaneously stepped into the sky. The sky shook as 4 figures instantly shot out and swiftly flew towards the void lightning pool. Under Xiao Yan's sleeves, Xiao Jin's snake-like body was coiled around Xiao Yan's wrist. When it saw the wound on Xiao Yan's palm, it involuntarily let out a soft cry and licked the wound. Traces of purple gold blood also flowed into Xiao Yan's body as the little fellow licked. Chapter 295. Within the lightning pool passageway, Xiao Yan and the other 3 were flying forward at an extremely fast speed. During the flight, Xiao Yan would occasionally use his somewhat curious gaze to carefully observe the enormous lightning pillars that surrounded the few of them. Those thick lightning pillars were shot out from the pillars. They were like soldiers that guarded this lightning-filled world. The thick lightning pillars were like giant pythons that coiled around Xiao Yan and the other 3. At such a close distance, Xiao Yan could clearly feel the terrifying aura of the lightning pillars. Xiao Yan's face was solemn. At the closest distance, the lightning pillars were only a few inches away from him. It was hard to imagine what would happen if he touched them. "Don't bother about this thing. Let's go straight. Soon, we will be able to leave the area protected by this thing." Gu Li's face was solemn. Even though they were already in the lightning pool passageway, it was even more dangerous. Once they were touched by the lightning pillars, the consequences would be unimaginable. Xiao Yan's actions were a little stiff as he nodded his head when he heard this. His forward speed had become much faster without him noticing. That thunderbolt appeared to be following behind the few of them, inseparable from their shadows. "Haha, don't worry. There is no need to be too nervous. This lightning pillar is only the outer layer of the lightning pool. Hence, it is more powerful. However, once we reach the deeper lightning pool, we will be safe there. As long as we do not enter the core region of the lightning pool, you can rest assured." Qi Lin's character was bold and unrestrained. Given his understanding of lightning, he was not afraid of it at all. When he heard Qi Lin's words, Xiao Yan could not help but raise his eyebrows and ask, "Shouldn't the core region of the lightning pool be the place where the lightning energy is the most concentrated and pure? Why can't we enter it?" Qi Lin nodded his head. However, he quickly shook his head and frowned. The lightning energy in the depths of the lightning pool is indeed pure and powerful. However, it is also because of this that the destructive power it possesses is not something that the lightning pools in the outer layer of the lightning pool can compare to. Furthermore, as the core region of the lightning pool, the protective power is even more terrifying. Forget about us. Even people like Muhan would not dare to approach that place. Xiao Yan nodded his head once again to show that he understood. The few of them gradually became silent. Unknowingly, the few of them were getting closer and closer to the end of the passageway. When the white light enveloped their bodies, Xiao Yan and the others could not help but close their eyes. When they reopened their eyes, Xiao Yan could not help but feel shocked by the scene before him. This place was indeed a world of thunder and lightning. When Xiao Yan opened his eyes, the scene in front of him was an extremely vast sea of lightning. Countless bolts of silver lightning were like giant snakes as they rapidly slithered through the sea of lightning. The rumbling of thunder was unceasing. Even though he was standing far away, he could still feel his heart tremble. The lightning energy here is indeed extremely powerful. No wonder even half-martial emperors yearn for this place. Xiaoyan looked at the vast sea of lightning with excitement. He couldn't help but feel shocked by the scene before him. Although the power of lightning here was not as terrifying as the pill lightning he had drawn out when he was refining the emperor-grade pill, it was superior in that there were countless bolts of lightning. If he were to really compare them, the lightning here was more terrifying. Now is not the time to rush to make a breakthrough. Let's go find those fellows first. If we miss this opportunity and can't find them, it will be troublesome if we fight later. Guli reminded in a serious voice. As soon as Guli said that, Xiaoyan immediately came back to his senses. He nodded at Guli and then his gaze fell on Qin Zhong. He said with a smile, "Brother Qin, you should go find a safe place to cultivate first. We still have to deal with MOD and the others. I'm afraid the next time we meet will be after we leave this place. I also hope you can make a breakthrough. At that time, I have something to ask of you." When Qin Zhong heard that, he could not help but reveal a worried expression. The enemies Xiaoyan was going to face this time were very different from the past. A 9-star half-martial emperor was in existence that 8-star half-martial emperors could not compare to. Although Xiaoyan was not weak, he was only a 3-star half-martial emperor after all. However, in the end, Qin Zhong nodded heavily. He did not say anything. He cupped his hands at the 3 people in front of him, and then turned around and quickly flew towards a certain direction of the lightning pool. At this moment, the only thing he could do was to ensure his own safety. Only then would he not cause trouble for Xiaoyan and the others. Seeing Qin Zhong's departing figure, Xiaoyan finally breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Truth be told, he did not hold much hope for the battle against MOD and the others. After all, 9-star half-martial emperors were not just empty words. As for Guyu, he believed that Guyu would definitely not interfere this time around. Thus, no matter what, he could only rely on himself and the 2 people beside him for the battle this time around. Let's go. It's time to experience the might of a 9-star half-martial emperor. As Xiaoyan turned around, he spoke with a grave tone. His body moved and he began to chase after Guyu and the others. When Xiaoyan had first appeared in the lightning pool, he had vaguely seen MOD and the others enter the lightning pool. Thus, he was able to roughly determine their direction and location. Gu Li and Qi Lin, who were following closely behind, looked at each other. Then, their gazes landed on Xiaoyan. After taking a deep look at him, they slowly withdrew their gazes and quickly followed after Xiaoyan. After a moment, 8 figures stood in the lightning pool in the void. They were separated into 2 sides, and they were looking at each other. There is a path to heaven, yet you refuse to take it. There is no gate to hell, yet you insist on coming here to throw away your life. MOD's face was filled with ridicule as he looked at Xiaoyan's group standing on the opposite side. He did not expect that these 3 fellows in front of him would be so bold. They had just entered the lightning pool in the empty realm, yet they had come looking for them to fight. Indeed, I did not expect you to be so daring. Are you trying to take advantage of the fact that we have yet to make a breakthrough to the next realm to fight? Mu Han sneered as he looked at Xiaoyan and the other 2. His face was filled with disdain. Originally, I wanted to let you live for a while longer. However, since you insist on courting death, don't blame this old man. Not to mention Mu Han. Even Yan Bing would feel disdain for Xiaoyan and the other 2. Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes as he stared at Mu Han. His expression was solemn. After a long while, he finally spoke in an indifferent tone. You have already rejected your opponent before the battle has even begun. If you do not have sufficient confidence in yourself, then you are simply too foolish. Mu Han stared at Xiaoyan. His eyes were like the claws of an eagle as he stared at the latter. However, he did not say anything. While Xiaoyan's side was preparing to fight with MOD's group, there were 4 human figures seated within an extremely hidden and mysterious large hall in another place. A dim light illuminated the floor in front of the 4 of them. Only their shoes could be seen clearly. Everything else seemed extremely mysterious. You're neither a human nor a ghost. Why did you call us here? The hoarse and old voice was filled with anger. It turned into a thunderous roar as it reverberated in the hall. It shook one's heart and soul. At the same time, the teacups in the hands of the other 3 exploded. TSK, 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 TSK. Sect leader Wu, why are you so anxious? All of you have waited for hundreds of years. What's the difference between a few moments? TSK. At this moment, a ghostly and eerie laughter sounded faintly from the darkness. The voice came without any warning, and they could not detect any aura. The person who had come made the four supreme being experts, who were usually able to do whatever they wanted, feel a sense of solemnity in their hearts. Among the four of them, there were naturally some who understood the meaning behind the words. Two of them secretly exchanged glances before they looked at the void in front of them, and asked calmly, "What do you mean by what you said just now? What do you mean by waiting for hundreds of years?" TSK. Could it be that after hundreds of years, the four of you have forgotten that thing? The four people in the darkness narrowed their eyes as a cold light flickered in their eyes. Even in the darkness, it was still frightening. Sky Annihilation Step. Chapter 296. Bang! The instant the dark, cold voice of unknown origin was once again emitted, the entire hall was immediately filled with four incomparably frightening pressures. Turbulent do-chi waves swept repeatedly within the hall, causing the entire hall to emit waves of trembling sounds. "What did you say?" Four shocked cries sounded at the same time. The entire hall shook unceasingly. A thunder-like buzzing sound resounded throughout the hall, shaking one's soul. TSK. Looks like the few of you have not forgotten about that thing. Sky Extinction Steps, the skill that Tianju Shangren became famous for. It is one of the keys to opening the Tianju ancient tomb. Only by doing so will you have the opportunity to obtain Tianju Shangren's inheritance. A dark cold laughter was faintly emitted. The person who spoke did not reveal much fear in the face of these four renowned ultimate Zun experts. On the contrary, the four people present were even more afraid of him. "Do you know where that clan is now?" One of the four people asked with a somewhat doubtful tone. The four factions had searched for that clan for an unknown number of years. Until now there was still no news. They did not believe that this ghost thing that hid in a dark corner, and did not dare to show itself, could be found. "Haha, I don't know." These simple words caused the old man who was addressed as sect leader Wu to immediately become furious. An invisible force crazily erupted, and the stone chair under him was immediately crushed into a pile of rocks. "Humph! Ghost thing, you are playing with the four of us." With a stern cry, the old man's palm violently smashed into the empty space beside him. Immediately, a circular invisible spatial ripple swiftly spread apart. It carried a frightening might that could crush everything as it swept in all directions. The spatial ripple automatically scattered when it reached the other three people. At the same time, a mysterious aura was finally emitted from a certain spot in the darkness. "Humph! Get out here for me." The moment the aura was emitted, the old man's hand was suddenly extended. His 5 fingers were spread open, and a suction force surged out from his palm. Immediately, the space where the aura was emitted from was forcefully torn apart by this crazy suction force. At the same time, a black figure swiftly flashed through the empty space. A dark cold laughter was once again emitted. "Kikik. Sect head Wu's temper is really fiery. Although I don't know where that clan is now, but regarding the Sky Extinction Step. Kik. Once these words were spoken, the eyes of the 4 old men hardened. They exchanged glances with each other. That leader Wu also slowly withdrew the do-chi that he had released. He withdrew his aura and did not say anything else. At this moment, another old man slowly spoke. His tone and attitude were much better than the previous 2. "Haha, Palace Master, since you have already said so much, this old man thinks that there is no need for you to continue beating around the bush. We usually mind our own business. Now that you have gathered us here, it can't be just to say these words to us, right?" TSK. Sword Sovereign is indeed the one who knows how to conduct himself. Compared to Sovereign Wu. Enough, there's no need to say any more superfluous words. You bunch of things that are neither human nor ghost. You've never suffered a loss when doing things. Speak, tell us the specific location of the heaven extinguishing steps. What are the conditions? That ghost-like human figure had yet to finish speaking when the second old man who had spoken earlier spoke once again, and interrupted the words in his mouth. The four old men clearly knew this person who called himself the hallmaster. Hence, they spoke with the intention of making a deal. Keek. The ghost-like strange laughter once again sounded. A cluster of black fog instantly flew past the only space in front of the four of them that had light. The four of them remained indifferent on the surface, but their hearts were secretly awed. Since the few sect heads are in a hurry, this palace master shall not say any more nonsense. The few of you only need to be clear that the heaven extinguishing steps is in the hands of a little fellow called Xiao Yan. He has changed his name to Yan Xiao. Currently, he is at a place that one must pass when traveling to the western region, the savage ancient city. There is no need for this palace master to say anything more about who is guarding that place. Humph. Since you know who is there, why is there a need to say any more nonsense to us? He is in the savage ancient city. Forget about us. Even your ghost hall would not dare to do anything to him. The four of them had just heard Xiao Yan's name, and quietly remembered it in their hearts. However, the black shadow's following words caused the expressions of the four of them to immediately change. They did not expect that Xiao Yan was coincidentally in the savage ancient city. Although they were in the western region, the might of the Yunin Pavilion still caused them to be extremely fearful. That kind of faction might be like the ghost hall behind the black shadow in front of them, which did not reveal itself, but as long as one knew about it, regardless of one's strength, one would understand that its terror was unimaginable. Hence, they would try their best to avoid a huge being like the Yunin Pavilion. They naturally did not dare to easily attack Xiao Yan within the territory of the Yunin Pavilion. TSK. I already said that sect leader Wu has a fiery temper. Why are you angry again? According to my information, ever since that kid appeared in the southern region, he has been heading towards the savage ancient city. It is extremely likely that he is preparing to come to the western region. I believe that he will arrive in the western region soon. At that time, all you need to do is to wait for him. In the face of sect leader Wu's angry shout, the black shadow laughed mockingly, following which he revealed the information that he knew. Only at this moment did the four people in front of him relax. They continuously muttered Xiao Yan's name in their hearts. Xiao Yan. Yan Xiao. Xiao Yan. Yan Xiao. You have handed him over to us to deal with. I wonder how much difference is his strength compared to ours? Suddenly, the sword sovereign narrowed his eyes and opened his mouth to ask an extremely important question. If the Xiao Yan that they were about to face had a similar strength as them, then even if they had 4 sovereign stage experts, it would still be difficult to kill him. Hence, they had no choice but to first understand the other party's strength. Only by knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy would one be able to win 100 battles. TSK, don't worry. That kid's strength has only broken through to the 3-star half-martial emperor level half a year ago. With your strength, how could you possibly fear him? Hearing the sword sovereign's words, the black shadow was not surprised. Instead he sneered. Once those words were spoken, the 4 people immediately frowned. A mere 3-star half-martial emperor actually wanted them to take action. Wasn't this like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut? Wasn't this thinking too highly of that kid by the name of Xiao Yan? There was definitely a reason behind this abnormality. The 4 people thought of this at the same time. When faced with this ghost-like fellow, they had no choice but to be extremely careful. Since that Xiao Yan is merely a 3-star half-martial emperor, why don't you all take action yourselves? With his strength, he is at the bottom among all of you. At this moment, the third old man who spoke faintly. Following his words, the surrounding space started to ripple like a screen of water. TSK's Master Chen also knows that when we do many things, it is inconvenient for our whereabouts to be exposed. Without the permission of our superiors, we are not allowed to arbitrarily kill people in the city. After all, although our ghost palace is powerful, there are also many people who have their eyes on us. Borrowing a knife to kill someone. The old man who was addressed as Master Chen spoke in a deep voice. You can say that. However, I believe that this is merely a business between you all and me. Since you all are businessmen, there is no need to ask too clearly about some things. Once the water is clear, there will be no fish. The 4 people narrowed their eyes and muttered to themselves for a moment. However, they no longer said anything. Within the black fog, A pair of sinister eyes flickering with a strange light swept across the four people present. After a long time, the black shadow once again laughed sinisterly and said, "Let's not waste words. At that time, if we are to meet him, there is no need for the four of you to be lenient. As long as you are able to keep him alive and ensure that he does not die, the heaven end steps will be yours to take away." The strange atmosphere was once again broken. Following that, the four people let out a sigh of relief in their hearts. This time around, that sect master Wu's eyes turned. An extremely ruthless and cruel smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as he said, "Ha ha ha ha, I truly don't understand. A brat at that level is actually able to provoke all of you. He will truly not be able to escape this calamity." After those words left his mouth, a wave of extremely cooperative laughter finally sounded from within the hall. Chapter 297. While the four old men reached an agreement with the hall chief, the atmosphere between Xiao Yan's and Mu Han's parties within the lightning pool in the empty realm had become increasingly tense. Xiao Yan's group and Mu Han's group were separated into two sides in the vast lightning pool. The atmosphere was extremely stifling and oppressive. The invisible aura caused the continuously flowing thunderbolts to only be able to fly about 1,000 feet away from both parties. They continued to wander about, but ultimately did not dare to enter the boundary of the aura. From afar, countless silver lightning bolts surrounded the entire battlefield like a huge sphere. Lightning flashed, and in an instant, a bright moon appeared in the lightning pool. The space within the formless aura was surrounded by lightning, forming a circular battlefield. If one were to look at it from the outside, one would not be able to see the situation within. The situation here had naturally alarmed the other half-martial emperors who had entered the lightning pool. In addition, the gathering of lightning was undoubtedly a great gift for them, who urgently needed lightning energy to cultivate. In a short moment, nearly 10 half-martial emperors had gathered outside the aura. In addition to Xiao Yan's group, all the half-martial emperors present accounted for 2/3 of the total number of people who had entered the lightning pool. Through the layers of lightning, the half-martial emperors who had been attracted to the scene immediately saw the situation. When they saw that Xiao Yan's group was about to fight against a large number of people, these half-martial emperors could not help but feel a sense of seriousness for the three of them. Putting aside the number of people on both sides, just Mu Han alone was enough to suppress Gu Li and Qi Lin. From the looks of it, Xiao Yan's battle had already ended before it had even begun. When these half-martial emperors heard that Xiao Yan's group had actually taken the initiative to fight against MOD's group, they could not help but feel shocked by their bold actions. They knew that they were no match for MOD's group, yet they still wanted to fight. This was akin to a life-and-death struggle. Haha, I have long heard that you, Yin Xiao, have few opponents in the ancient savage city. Ever since you came to the ancient savage city, you have not been defeated. Even a few 7-star half-emperors have been defeated by your hands. I really don't know if you are really as powerful as the rumors say, or if those few fellows are just trash. Zhang Hao, who was in MOD's group, strode to Yan Bing's side and stared at Xiao Yan with a disdainful grin. The fighting energy in his body had already been circulated to every part of his body, and he was ready to strike at any time. Even though Xiao Yan's battle accomplishments were godly, in his heart, the Xiao Yan before him was only a 3-star half-martial emperor. How could the disparity between two half-martial emperors be so easily made up for? Today Zhang Hao would trample on Yan Xiao in front of everyone. He would trample on Yan Zhao's legendary battle record, and let the entire wildlands know that Yan Xiao was just an arrogant clown. Only Zhang Hao was the true dragon among men. He wanted to use Xiao Yan as a stepping stone to improve his reputation. However, while he was thinking in this manner in his heart, he had forgotten that he was a 7-star half-martial emperor. Even if he had defeated Xiao Yan, what could defeating a 3-star half-martial emperor do to him? In the eyes of others, this was merely something within reason. However, once he was defeated, not only would it be a psychological blow to his confidence, it would also continue Xiao Yan's undefeated legend in the ancient savage city. Faced with Zhang Hao's clamor, Xiao Yan had a mocking expression on his face. He turned his head and said with a smile, "If you want to know whether my strength is real or fake, why do you need to talk? Why don't you just come and try me?" As his voice sounded, Xiaoyan clenched his hand and the dark heavy buster sword immediately appeared in his hand. With a wave of the heavy buster sword, the wind whistled and the sound of sonic booms resounded incessantly. When Zhang Hao saw this scene, it was exactly what he wanted. He forcefully waved his hand and a long sword appeared with a flicker. The body of the sword was bitingly cold. As the blade of the sword swayed, it reflected a dazzling light. Zhang Hao's body moved and the long sword immediately streaked across the sky. As the thin and sharp body of the sword swayed, it appeared like a water snake flickering with cold light as it violently pierced towards Xiaoyan. When Zhang Hao passed by Yan Bing, the latter's words of warning entered his ears. Don't be careless. He is indeed not as simple as you imagine him to be. Hearing Yan Bing's warning words, Zhang Hao's originally confident heart couldn't help but waver. Yan Bing's words were truly overestimating this Yan Xiao too much. No matter what, he had followed Yan Xiao for so many years. Now, after hearing Yan Zhao's words, he had been reduced to being inferior to a 3-star half-martial emperor brat. How could his state of mind remain calm? The more Yan Bing spoke of Xiaoyan like this, the more he wanted to prove himself. He wanted to let Yan Bing know that as a 7-star half-martial emperor, he was absolutely not someone a mere 3-star half-martial emperor could compare to. Ha! Following a frightening shout, the long sword danced. The feminine body of the sword swayed along with it. Like a water snake, it ruthlessly pierced towards Xiaoyan's head. Xiaoyan's expression did not change. He slightly raised the huge ruler in his hand. With a wave of his arm, the wide huge ruler ferociously smashed towards the incoming long sword. One hard and one soft, one thick and one thin. The two weapons formed an enormous contrast, giving one an indescribably strange feeling. Ding! At the moment when the huge ruler was smashed over, the long sword that was like a water snake was like a leech. It clung onto the body of the huge ruler. The tip of the sword lightly touched the body of the ruler, and a clear collision sound was emitted. Xiaoyan couldn't help but frown. As for the long sword, it continued to pierce through. It dodged the huge ruler, and continued to pierce towards Xiaoyan's face. This fellow's moves are really strange. Although it looks like he is coming close to my heavy Xian ruler, in reality, he has only collided with the heavy Xian ruler a few times. This fellow's attacks are completely relying on dodging the huge ruler. Surging spiritual strength poured out. Zhang Hao's movements were all seen by Xiaoyan. With regards to this sword that was so close to him, Xiaoyan could not help but feel a little astonished in his heart. However, in the next moment, the corners of Xiaoyan's mouth curled into a sneer. Although Zhang Hao's moves were tricky and ruthless, they relied on dodging to find an opening to attack. This kind of move was useless in front of an alchemist. Standing at the back, when Yan Bing saw the sneer at the corners of Xiaoyan's mouth, he immediately felt that something was wrong. Previously, he had already warned Zhang Hao not to underestimate his opponent. However, he did not expect that this fellow would actually turn a blind eye to his words. He was only anxious to show off. Now, it seemed that Zhang Hao was going to suffer. However, at this moment, Zhang Hao, who was completely unaware of all of this, was looking at Xiaoyan with disdain. The long sword in his hand had already arrived in front of Xiaoyan. At such a close distance, it was impossible for him to dodge. Furthermore, the huge ruler in his hand could not be used in time to block. Therefore, Xiaoyan was unable to dodge this attack. Gu Li and Qi Lin, who were originally rather confident in Xiaoyan, could not help but feel that things were not going well for Xiaoyan when they saw the scene in front of them. Only when Gu Li also noticed the expression on Xiaoyan's face did he press down Qi Lin, who was about to attack, by the side. Yan Xiao, you are only a so-so. You can't even take a single attack from me. Zhang Hao's face was sinister as he laughed wildly. Xiaoyan smiled and did not reply. However, in the instant that the long sword attacked, his idle left hand suddenly lifted. Spiritual strength crazily gushed out from between his eyebrows and swiftly formed an invisible palm in front of Xiaoyan. The movement of the invisible palm was exactly the same as the movement of Xiaoyan's extended left hand. In the next moment, Xiaoyan raised his left hand in front of him. Both of his eyes stared intently at the long sword that was ferociously thrusting towards him. The sharp wind caused Xiaoyan's face to be a little stupefied. However, Xiaoyan turned a blind eye to this. As the long sword attacked, Xiao Yan's raised hand suddenly clenched tightly. At the same time, he roared in his heart. Heaven-class soul skill, heavenly hand. As the roar in his heart sounded, the invisible palm instantly solidified and formed a huge palm in the empty space in front of Xiao Yan. As Xiao Yan's left hand clenched tightly, the huge palm also grabbed the long sword that was coming towards Xiao Yan. A frightening strength continued to compress the long sword in his hand. Under such a frightening pressure, the strong do qi that was contained in the long sword finally erupted uncontrollably after a few breaths. The huge palm could not help but tremble. Xiao Yan coldly snorted and exerted strength in his palm once again. Spiritual strength crazily gushed out, and the heavenly hand's strength instantly soared. It actually forcefully squeezed the long sword in the center of his palm. Seeing this, Zhang Hao's heart instantly turned pale with fright. He wanted to dodge and retreat, but Xiao Yan would not let him off so easily. He suddenly waved his right hand, and the heavy Xian ruler that Zhang Hao had cleverly dodged earlier suddenly jerked. Following this, he waved it ferociously. The wide ruler's body brought about a sharp sound as it tore through the empty space. A frightening wind pressure directly faced Zhang Hao's face. In the next moment, under Zhang Hao's horrified gaze, the wide and huge ruler ruthlessly smashed onto his face. Instantly, the somewhat muffled sound of bones shattering was quietly emitted. Zhang Hao only felt that his entire body was in a semi-conscious state. The dizziness that came from the depths of his mind almost caused him to faint. However, the intense pain caused him to truly experience the feeling of being crushed. This caused him to be in a state where he did not know whether he was dead or alive. Seeing Zhang Hao being sent flying, Xiao Yan's heart immediately felt refreshed. Ever since he had used the heavy Xian ruler to slap Luo Jin's face, he seemed to be addicted to this feeling. Just now he had casually tried it out. He did not expect the effect to be so out of his expectations. The collision between Xiao Yan and Zhang Hao had only occurred for a short moment. By the time everyone recovered, all they saw was the scene of Zhang Hao being sent flying by the huge ruler. Bastard! Seeing Zhang Hao being sent flying by the huge ruler, a furious expression immediately surged onto Yan Bing's indifferent face. She cursed angrily from her mouth and her body suddenly flashed as she charged toward Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, who originally wanted to continue attacking Zhang Hao to prevent future troubles, saw Yan Bing actually rushing over. His expression could not help but change slightly. However, immediately after, Gu Li, who was beside him, laughed out loud and said, "Don't worry and just cripple that guy. Let us deal with this guy first." Xiao Yan nodded. Gu Li also swept past Xiao Yan and rushed towards Yan Bing. When Xiao Yan's gaze once again landed on Zhang Hao's body, he had already quickly regained consciousness. However, his entire person looked battered and exhausted. His entire face had become extremely distorted. His entire face looked like a metal pancake from one side. Because his left eye socket had been struck by the huge ruler, a corner of his flesh and bones had been forcibly shattered. At this moment, it was unknown where it had gone. His entire face was dripping with blood. His entire person had been disfigured. It looked extremely terrifying. Even Xiao Yan could not help but feel a burst of fear in his heart when he saw this scene. However, even though this was the case, Zhang Hao was still filled with unwillingness. Amidst a hoarse roar that sounded like the roar of a demonic beast, Zhang Hao once again charged explosively toward Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan shook his head with a face filled with disdain. He knew that although Zhang Hao appeared to be battered and exhausted, his overall strength was not much inferior to his. However, the latter's current appearance had truly caused Xiao Yan to not have the heart to continue fighting with him. A 7-star half-martial emperor is only SOSO. Let him play with you. After a disdainful sneer sounded, Xiao Yan retrieved his gaze. At the same time, he casually waved his hand at Zhang Hao. A black ray of light immediately shot out explosively. Like a cannonball, it ruthlessly shot towards Zhang Hao. "Don't let me see him again. It's disgusting." As the black shadow flew out, Xiao Yan's tone was indifferent as he gave the order. In the next instant, before Zhang Hao's astonished gaze, the black shadow ruthlessly collided with him. Only after the other people beside him had moved aside did Xiao Yan slowly raise his gaze and look at Mu Han, who had been standing in the air and staring at him the entire time. Chapter 298. In the lightning pool in the sky, An intense battle was currently being carried out. Yan Bing was fighting against Guli and Jilin by herself. However, she was not at a disadvantage. When she attacked, she also had some leeway. This allowed her to fight more freely. On the other side, the battle between Zhang Hao and the Northern King was much more obvious. The Northern King was only a puppet. However, unlike other puppets, it was not an ordinary puppet. When Xiao Yan was refining the Northern King, he had sealed all the battle experience of his original body, the Northern Dragon King, into the Northern King. This allowed the Northern King to not only not feel pain, but also display the might of a 6-star half-martial emperor. Adding on the indestructible puppet body, even with Zhang Hao's strength as a 7-star half-martial emperor, he was unable to break through the Northern King's body. Thus, before the Northern King's most primitive and violent punches and kicks, Zhang Hao, who was a peak late-stage 7-star half-martial emperor, could only take a beating. At this moment, Yan Bing was being restrained by Guli and Jilin, and Zhang Hao was being tyrannical by the Northern King. At this moment, only Xiao Yan, MOD, Old Freak Hu and the strongest person present, the 9-star half-martial emperor Muhan, were still standing steadily in the sky. At this moment when the battle was being carried out fiercely, those half-martial emperors who had originally come over to cultivate and devour lightning energy were all dumbstruck when they saw Xiao Yan using the most violent method to send a 7-star half-martial emperor flying. They had all heard of how powerful Xiao Yan was. They also knew that Xiao Yan had defeated several 7-star half-martial emperors. However, it was the first time that they had seen someone send a 7-star half-martial emperor flying with a single strike of a ruler. TSK. This Yan Xiao is truly a heaven-defying individual. A 3-star half-martial emperor sent a 7-star half-martial emperor flying. If this news were to spread, Yan Zhao's name would likely shake the entire southern region. Not only that, not only does his master possess frightening strength, even that puppet of his is actually this powerful. A puppet with the strength of a half-martial emperor. In the entire southern region, only that power would possess such a thing. Could it be that Yan Xiao came from there? The few quasi-emperors couldn't help but exclaim as they stared at the North King who was torturing Zhang Hao. When that faction was mentioned, the expressions of the few half-martial emperors around him involuntarily changed. If this was the case, Yan Xiao, who was in front of them, was someone that they could not afford to offend. Yes. No matter what, everyone, if there is a need later, I think that it would be better for us to try our best to help him. After all, regardless of whether Yan Xiao is a member of that faction or not, his future growth potential is something that both of us can see. Helping him once will not be a loss. After a moment of silence, an old man with the strength of an 8-star half-martial emperor quietly said to the several people beside him. Hearing what the old man said, the other half-martial emperors muttered to themselves for a moment. Then, they looked to each other and shook their heads. The growth potential of this Yan Xiao before them was indeed worthy of them helping him. However, one must not forget that what Xiao Yan was facing right now was not as simple as an 8-star half-martial emperor. As a 9-star half-martial emperor, Muhan was a true giant in the ancient city of Wildlands. Even if Xiao Yan's talent was frightening, what could he do in front of Muhan? He would still be unable to escape the fate of being killed. Thus, these half-martial emperors would not offend a 9-star half-martial emperor for a person who was about to die. Seeing this, the 8-star half-martial emperor old man could only helplessly sigh. He no longer said anything and turned his head to continue watching the situation of the battle. The one with the surname Hu, you go and help Yan Bing. This old man will personally take care of this brat. Seeing that old monster who was beside MOD, was also staring at Xiao Yan, Muhan immediately frowned and said to the latter in a deep voice. Hearing that, old monster whose relaxed brows also started to frown. He glanced at Muhan and discovered that the latter was looking at him with a fierce expression. Although old monster who was dissatisfied in his heart, he could only silently nod his head due to the latter's strength. Old monster who casually glanced at MOD, who was coldly watching from the side, and narrowed his eyes. Then his body moved and he flew toward the battle between Yan Bing and the other two. When old monster who flew past Xiao Yan, a weak voice that only he could hear entered his ears. Help me stall Yan Bing. Those simple words caused Old Monster Who's gaze to immediately become sharp. He nodded his head imperceptibly, and his speed instantly increased. After flying past Xiaoyan, Old Monster Whose figure rapidly rushed toward the battle between Yanbing and the others. The corner of Xiaoyan's mouth was lifted into an ice-cold smile. He lifted his eyes and coincidentally met Mu Han's eyes. Mu Han's eyes stared intently at Xiaoyan. When he saw the cold smile on the corner of the latter's mouth, he involuntarily felt a little strange in his heart. With a cold snort, Mu Han tossed aside the worry in his heart. His feet stepped on empty air as he walked toward Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan faced Mu Han, who was heading toward him. He slowly withdrew the cold smile on the corner of his mouth. The dou qi in his body was quietly circulated to every part of his body, preparing to deal with Mu Han's attack at any moment. At the same time, Old Monster Whose figure had already appeared not far behind Yanbing on the other side. Yanbing involuntarily frowned when he sensed Old Monster Whose aura behind him. Old Monster Whose actions caused him to feel a little strange. Soon after, Gu Li and Qi Lin in front of him once again unleashed their dou skills and violently charged toward him. Faced with these two people in front of him, Yanbing did not dare to be careless in his heart. The dou qi in his body wildly poured out. Various kinds of frightening dou skills were repeatedly shot out, blocking the two people in front of him. However, just as the battle between the three of them was becoming more and more intense, a shriveled hand appeared behind Yanbing and firmly imprinted itself on her back with unparalleled power. Bang! Immediately, the dou qi that had been agglomerated in his palm wildly poured out. It invaded the interior of Yanbing's body and wantonly destroyed his internal organs, qi paths, and dou qi in a destructive manner. At the same time, Yanbing's body suddenly stiffened. The dou skill in his palm had lost the support of his dou qi. Under the attack of Gu Li and Qi Lin, it could only endure for a short couple of breaths before it exploded with a bang. The remaining might smashed into Yanbing's body, causing his body to fly back uncontrollably. The appearance of this scene caused MOD and the others in the battleground to immediately turn pale with fright. Their faces involuntarily revealed a shocked expression. No matter how they thought about it, they had never expected that the 8-star bandit, Old Monster Who, would actually suddenly betray them at such a moment in this big battle that they were almost certain to win. It was really hard to imagine. It should be known that in such a high-level big battle, the betrayal of any random bandit expert would have an enormous impact on the entire battle. Hence, the sudden betrayal of Old Monster Who at this moment caused them to feel frightened. Not only that, but those bandit experts outside of the battleground also felt a little surprised when they saw that Old Monster Who was originally on MOD's side, had suddenly betrayed them. They were all aware that Old Monster Who was paid by someone to help them eliminate a calamity. Logically speaking, he should do his best to help MOD. However, the current situation was the complete opposite. At this moment, not only MOD, but even these outsiders were unable to guess the reason behind this. Chapter 299. Old Demon Who You're Crazy. Yanbing, who had been sent flying back thousands of miles, stopped her body with great difficulty. She first spat out a large mouthful of scarlet blood mixed with pieces of her internal organs. After which, she lifted her head to look at Old Demon Who with a pale face. Her expression was ferocious as she angrily roared. However, in the face of Yanbing's angry roar, Old Demon Who only grinned. His sinisterly white teeth revealed a mocking smile. In addition to his sneering eyes, this caused Yanbing's heart to become even more furious when she saw it. Old Monster Who, what you're doing is going against our previous agreement. When Yanbing's angry roar sounded, MOD lifted his gaze. A pair of sinister old eyes stared intently at Old Demon Who. His expression was extremely gloomy as he spoke in a deep voice. Hearing this, Old Demon Who turned his gaze with a sneer on his face. His gaze shot toward MOD as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. Oh, agreement? What agreement? When Old Demon Whose words left his mouth, MOD's expression became slightly serious. After which his expression immediately became ugly. The hands that were hidden under his sleeves slowly clenched. MOD was so angry that his face trembled. A long while later, he angrily shouted in a cold voice. What do you mean by this? Don't tell me that you want to turn your back on us. Old Demon who once again laughed coldly. He glanced at Gu Li and Qi Lin beside him before turning his gaze away and laughing mockingly. Don't tell me that you can't see that I have already turned my back on you? You. This time, Mod was really angry. He sucked in large mouthfuls of cold air, as if he wanted to calm the anger in his chest. His skinny body continuously trembled, because the anger in his heart had already caused him to be unable to calm down. Fine. Even if you want to turn your back on me, please give me a reason. Finally, Mod took a deep breath with great difficulty. His emotions stabilized slightly. His scarlet eyes stared at Old Demon who as he spoke in a slightly hoarse voice. Old Demon who laughed coldly. His gaze glanced at Xiao Yan on the other side. Noticing Old Demon whose gaze, Xiao Yan smiled. His eyes were filled with an indescribable meaning. My rule is that if I take someone's money, I have to solve their problems. Since I've taken the money, I naturally have to work. Impossible. I was the one who made the agreement with you. That brat wouldn't have recognized you before you arrived in the wildlands. As soon as Old Weirdo who spoke, Mod immediately shouted angrily. It is true that there is an agreement between us. However, Mr. Yan Xiao has offered an even higher price. Moreover, he has already paid his remuneration. As for you, it seems that the medicinal pills on you have already been used up in order to auction off that lightning invitation. Mod was at a loss for words. How could he have known that there would be such a fellow at the auction who had more Emperor-grade pills than him? If it were not for this reason, he would not have taken out the only 4 Emperor-grade pills he had. Yan Xiao. It's you again, Yan Xiao. Mod involuntarily roared. His heart was incomparably furious. However, he knew that he was no match for Xiao Yan no matter what. Hence, he turned his head to look at Mu Han. At this moment, the only person present who could deal with Xiao Yan's group was him. Master Mu. That's enough. I didn't expect that you would dare to betray me after being intimidated by me. Your courage is commendable. Mu Han looked at Old Weirdo who with an ice-cold expression as he spoke with a calm smile. It was as if all of this was unimportant. Old Weirdo who frowned slightly and narrowed his eyes. His body moved back slightly without anyone noticing. Mu Han was not in the mood to pay attention to Old Weirdo whose little movements. He turned his gaze back to Xiao Yan and said with a smile. However, you are quite capable. No wonder those 7-star half-martial emperors could not suppress you. Your strength has indeed surpassed your cultivation level. Xiao Yan's gaze turned cold. He did not dare to be careless. As a 9-star half-martial emperor, it was too easy for Mu Han to deal with him. Although he had the Sky Annihilation step, his strength was limited, and he was unable to unleash the true might of the Sky Annihilation step. Hence, in the upcoming battle, once Mu Han attacked, Xiao Yan had to prepare for the worst. Swoosh! A sharp sound of wind breaking resounded. Xiao Yan's expression instantly turned grave. His body moved and he was about to retreat. However, the space in front of him shattered and Mu Han appeared in front of Xiao Yan. He waved his hand and sent a palm strike towards Xiao Yan's chest. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan's expression turned grave. He knew that it was too late for him to dodge. He could only quickly circulate the Do Qi within his body and gather it in his palm. He fiercely met the incoming palm strike head-on. Imph! You overestimate yourself. With a cold snort, the might of Mu Han's palm immediately soared. Turbulent Do Qi agglomerated on his palm, emitting a glaring golden glow. Wherever the palm passed, the empty space would be shattered. The frightening wind pressured everyone until they could not breathe. Xiao Yan faced the fierce astral wind head-on, and the pressure in his heart increased. Is this the strength of a 9-star half-emperor? As expected, it isn't something that an 8-star half-emperor can compare to, Xiao Yan thought in his heart. At the same time, the Do Qi within his body frantically condensed in his palm. If he didn't use his full strength when facing an expert like Mu Han, the only outcome that awaited him was death. Boom! When the two palms collided, terrifying Do Qi exploded from their palms. In merely a few breaths' time, Xiao Yan's complexion suddenly turned pale. Before he could react, he was sent flying by Mu Han's palm strike. After Xiao Yan stabilized his body with great difficulty, he involuntarily vomited a mouthful of blood. His complexion instantly turned deathly pale, and his originally vigorous aura rapidly weakened. However, compared to the injuries on his body, what shocked Xiaoyan even more was Muhan's strength. Even an 8-star half-emperor wouldn't be able to easily break through Xiaoyan's palm strike. However, Muhan was able to break through Xiaoyan's palm strike as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. From this, it could be seen how frightening his strength was. A 9-star half-emperor was indeed not in existence that an 8-star half-emperor could compare to. Until this moment, half of Xiaoyan's body was still in a numb state. This was all thanks to the strength of his physical body. Otherwise, if it was someone with a weaker body, even if that person was a 7-star half-D, it was likely that that person would have at least lost an arm under Muhan's palm. Seeing that Xiaoyan's injuries weren't serious, Muhan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly as he softly exclaimed. Evidently, he was also slightly astonished by the result of his palm strike. However, he quickly regained his senses and stared at Xiaoyan with an astonished gaze. His eyes narrowed as he said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect that not only do you possess exceptional strength, you've even cultivated your physical body to such an extent. This can be considered your capital, right? No wonder you were able to receive my attack head-on." Speaking till this point, Muhan's tone paused for a moment as he looked at Xiaoyan with interest. After a short while he continued to speak. "However, if this is all you have, it is still far from enough. Go ahead and use all of your abilities. Allow me to experience exactly what you, Yan Xiao, have relied on to defeat a 7-star half-martial emperor despite being 4 stars above you." After he finished speaking, Muhan was about to stand up and attack again. However, in the next instant he frowned again. Not far away from him, 2 figures rapidly flew over and blocked his path. These 2 people were Gu Li and Qi Lin. When the 2 of them appeared, their gazes were directed at Muhan as they released their dou qi. They were prepared to fight Muhan at any moment. "Yan Xiao, you should leave first. Let us block him first. After that, we'll find an opportunity to leave." Just as Gu Li finished speaking, Muhan immediately let out a cold snort and said, "Humph. Leave. None of you should even think of leaving this place today." After he finished speaking, Muhan's heart moved and a torrential soul power rapidly spread out from between his eyebrows. At the same time, the shriveled hand under his sleeve suddenly waved. Rays of golden light shot out and quickly surrounded the entire space. Chapter 300. When the golden light shot out, the faces of everyone present quickly became solemn. "This is a formation?" Xiaoyan's eyes scanned his surroundings and involuntarily frowned. In the blink of an eye, the entire space was covered by the golden light. Hundreds of golden light scattered in the empty space. Under Muhan's control, each cluster of golden light spread out to form a barrier. All the barriers joined together and sealed Muhan's group, as well as Xiaoyan's group, within them. Although Xiaoyan wanted to use the sky extinction step to leave this place, the barriers had already been joined together. Regardless of how fast he was unable to leave this space. Gu Li and Qi Lin's faces were grave as they looked at the barrier. Compared to an alchemist, a formation master was truly terrifying in a real battle. The strength of an alchemist was due to the miraculous effects of their medicinal pills. They were able to revive the dead, turn the tides and save lives. On the other hand, a formation master could use the advantage of a formation to attack and defend, using offense as defense and defense as offense. Compared to an alchemist who restrained his edge, a formation master's edge was completely exposed. Xiaoyan's body moved and arrived in front of the barrier. Although the strength in his body was still present, he was not seriously injured. Hence, Xiaoyan's right fist was tightly clenched when his body paused. His right arm, which had just recovered, was once again filled with strength. Dou qi swiftly gathered in his palm as he lifted his right fist. Xiaoyan's body tilted slightly to the side, and his fist violently smashed downwards. Octane blast. Clang. The ferocious fist carried a frightening strength as it smashed onto the barrier. In the end, a clear sound similar to that of a bell was emitted in exchange for circular ripples that appeared like water waves. The ripples disappeared, and the barrier returned to its original state. Its undamaged appearance caused Xiaoyan's heart to involuntarily sink a little. The sturdiness of this barrier had far exceeded his imagination. Xiao Yan's octane blast appeared to have little effect in front of this barrier. Although it was able to scatter some of the energy on the barrier, the entire barrier would once again return to its original state in the blink of an eye. If this continued, even if Xiao Yan punched 100 times, he still wouldn't be able to break the barrier. When Gu Li and Qi Lin saw this, they couldn't help but feel a slight chill in their hearts. With the defensive strength of this barrier, it was likely that the three of them would have to attack together to have a chance of shattering it. However, Mu Han was right before them. If they wanted to restrain Mu Han, only Gu Li and Wang Chang would be able to join hands. Only then would they be able to restrain Mu Han for a short period of time. Once the battle dragged on, they would also be no match for Mu Han. Haha, I used a total of 300 formation discs to create this barrier. Even an 8-star half-martial emperor would not be able to break through it if he were to use his full strength for 2 to 4 hours. Do you really think that you can break through it by force? Mu Han's eyes stared at Xiao Yan as the corners of his mouth lifted into a disdainful sneer. As a 9-star half-martial emperor and a rank 3 formation master, he possessed absolute confidence and certainty in being able to defeat a mere Xiao Yan. Hearing Mu Han's words, Xiao Yan's heart grew even heavier. Although Mu Han's words were more or less exaggerated, the terror of this barrier was real. Xiao Yan had no choice but to admit that with his current strength, it would indeed be very difficult for him to break through this barrier. Boom. However, just when Xiao Yan's heart was feeling heavy, a thunder-like explosion suddenly sounded from behind Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's face was filled with shock the moment this explosion was emitted. He ignored the waves of pain that were being emitted from the remaining injuries within his body. His body suddenly moved, and the sky extinction step was unleashed. After which he turned around and pulled back. However, when Xiao Yan raised his head to look at the location of the explosion with a frightened expression, his expression could not help but become stunned in the next instant. Outside the barrier, there was an old man who was forming seals with both of his hands. In the void before him, a huge finger that was emitting golden light was rapidly condensing. Seeing Xiao Yan's gaze shooting over, the old man immediately laughed out loud and said, "Ha ha ha, I have long heard that Xiao Yan is very talented. However, I have long heard that although Mr. Yan Xiao looks simple, his strength far surpasses his cultivation." This old man still did not believe it. However, after seeing it today, Mr. is indeed a dragon amongst men. Ha ha ha. Mister, you are too kind. However, I wonder why you are doing this. Hearing the old man's words of praise, Xiao Yan cupped his hands and replied with a smile. Haha, this old man is also a person who loves talents. Seeing that Mr. Yan Xiao is in trouble, I am willing to lend you a hand. In that case, many thanks to Mr. for lending a hand. Hearing these words, Xiao Yan's heart immediately relaxed. Following which, a smile of having survived a disaster appeared on his face. He hurriedly cupped his hands and thanked the old man. Haha, Mr. Yan Xiao is too courteous. My name is Zhongli. Mr. Yan Xiao can just call me by my name. This old man shall not be courteous and call you Brother Yan Xiao. Brother Zhongli. Xiao Yan immediately laughed out loud. Someone had lent a helping hand. This originally caused Xiao Yan to be extremely surprised. Currently, it was merely a form of address. Naturally, Xiao Yan would not hesitate at all. After the two of them spoke, the huge finger in front of Zhongli was completely condensed. After which he casually pointed. The golden finger carried an earth-shattering and terrifying aura as it violently smashed towards the barrier. Boom! Another explosion sounded. The entire barrier that was formed by the formation immediately trembled. Wave after wave of energy ripples swiftly spread over the barrier. However, even though this was the case, the barrier was still intact after the strength of the golden finger was completely exhausted. Seeing this scene, Zhongli involuntarily frowned. This formation of Mu Han's was indeed quite extraordinary. Humph! Zhongli, it is unexpected that even you dare to intervene in this matter of the old man. This brat has really given all of you a great amount of courage. Mu Han's face was gloomy as he looked at Zhongli. His words were filled with disdain. Do you really think that you can defeat the old man with just your motley crew? A low and deep stern cry sounded. Spiritual strength immediately surged out wildly from between Mu Han's eyebrows. The seals in his hands swiftly changed, and the large formation that covered the entire space also began to change. Muhan waved his hand, and a couple of rays of light shot out. They swiftly entered the formation and disappeared. Huh! With a stern cry, Muhan's body suddenly shot explosively towards the ghoulie duo. At the same time, he flipped his palm and Doqi gathered. A palm was violently thrown towards the two of them. Bang! A frightening Doqi wave swiftly swept out with the three of them in the middle. It violently smashed onto the barrier and formed circular ripples. After a couple of breaths, the arm of Muhan, who was clashing with the ghoulie duo, suddenly shook. Frightening Doqi once again poured out and forcefully shattered the Doqi of the two. The ghoulie duo were also implicated when their Doqi was broken. They let out a muffled groan. Their faces were somewhat pale as they swiftly pulled back. When their bodies came to a stop, the palms under their sleeves trembled uncontrollably. The strength of a 9-star band emperor was indeed frightening. Even though the two of them had attacked together, it was still incomparably difficult for them to block Muhan. Yen Xiao, quick, break the barrier and quickly leave this place. If this drags on any longer, this fellow will become serious. At that time, it is likely that none of us will be able to escape. Quick! Ghouli's stern cry was once again transmitted over. Xiao Yan's expression was grave as he turned his head around. His gaze once again gathered on the barrier in front of him. Although there was only him and Zhongli, this barrier was really extraordinary. After being strengthened by Muhan earlier, this barrier was even harder to break. Damn it! I don't believe that I am unable to deal with this broken barrier, when I have already killed an 8-star band emperor. Seeing the increasingly grave expressions on the faces of the ghoulie duo, the current Xiao Yan finally